You are clearly just a dog, yet you possess 6,800 years of cultivation. With a casual lift of your paw, you can make a 1,000-year-old great demon who wreaks havoc in the human world perish completely. Everyone in the world believes you are a reclusive deity, but only you know that 68 years ago, you were just a stray dog almost stewed by a beggar. If you hadn't been saved by the poor scholar, Teng Zijing, who was on his way to the capital for the imperial examination, you would have almost been eaten by the beggar. Afterwards, relying on the mysterious pearl within your body, 1 year of cultivation was equivalent to 100 years of cultivation for other demons. This is how you gained 100-fold cultivation speed. In these 68 years, the once poor scholar had also achieved fame and success, becoming the benevolent governor of 80 prefectures. You accompanied him through vast landscapes, watching him transform from a spirited young man into the frail old man he is today. When Teng Zijing had only 2 years of life left, he stroked your snowy fur one last time and smilingly took off his heavy official robes. Without attendants, without a carriage, he once again carried his old scholar's satchel from yesteryear, and with you, transformed into a pair of down-and-out scholars and a local dog, retracing the path of their imperial examination journey to the capital, a path they first took 60 years ago in a dilapidated temple. You saved a small black dog that was almost eaten by beggars. Outside Lanner Temple, you merely raised your eyes and instantly crippled the 1,000-year-old tree demon that had plagued the common people. In the capital's lying-pin establishment, you concealed your demonic aura, relying solely on your mental prowess, and on the chessboard, swept aside those arrogant masters of the capital. This journey was Teng Zijing's farewell to the human world, while you were accompanying him to relive that first encounter 68 years ago. However, mortal's body ultimately cannot withstand the erosion of time. Upon returning from their travels, Teng Zijing, having exhausted his last bit of vitality, still fell ill. The scholar, who was once tall and well-proportioned and full of integrity, now lay weakly in bed, finding it difficult even to lift his hand to stroke you. Even using precious medicinal herbs to prolong his life was useless. It would instead overdraw his vitality and hasten death. Life and death are fated. You finally profoundly understood the weight of these words. Even though you possessed monstrous demonic power and world-shaking cultivation, you could only watch helplessly as your best friend slowly approached death. Teng Zijing lay weakly in bed and said to you, "If nothing unexpected happens, I should have a little over a year left. After I die, just leave. Go do what you want to do. Don't let my few good-for-nothing descendants tie you down. Children and grandchildren have their own fortunes. More than them. I hope you can live happily, because in this life, you have accompanied me the longest, treated me the best, and ultimately, you are the one who understands me most." You fell silent. Yes, you had depended on each other, sharing life and death, never abandoning each other even in the most destitute times. You had weathered over 60 years of trials together. How much genuine affection like this can there be in the human world? Consider it done. Then, since you're not speaking, Teng Zijing said with a smile, "I'm tired. I'll rest first," you softly said. All right. Teng Zijing wearily closed his eyes and fell asleep. Time flew by, and over a year passed. Throughout this past year, Teng Zijing's physical condition worsened day by day. He slept most of the day, only awake for a small portion of it, and you stayed by his bedside the entire time. Teng Dengchen and his wife also often waited on him. His granddaughter, Teng Kinking, sometimes came to play with her grandfather. Hearing that her grandfather was going to die, she cried heartbrokenly. The little girl even hugged your leg, begging you to save her grandfather. You felt both sorrowful and helpless about this. Who in this world cared more about him than you? In the last few months, Teng Yuxiu also brought her husband, Zhang Wulei, from Chunjun to visit her father. Zhang Wulei had military duties, so he rushed back after his visit, but Teng Yuxiu stayed at the Teng family home long-term to accompany her father in his final days. On this day, a sudden dry thunderclap echoed in the clear sky. Dark clouds gathered from the lakeside, and a torrential downpour began. The vast expanse of dark clouds actually spontaneously condensed into a towering figure that reached the heavens. Its shape resembled a dog. The dog grew larger and larger, taller and taller, gradually encompassing the entire Bailing prefecture city beneath it, and continued to expand. With a boom, an invisible ripple radiated outwards in all directions, instantly covering the entire Bailing prefecture, and continued to spread further. Wherever it passed, all demons and ghosts prostrated themselves on the ground, fearfully looking up at the sky. Fortunately, this terrifying aura dissipated in an instant, because the sky had turned completely dark earlier, so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. The common people did not notice that the dark clouds had previously formed into the shape of a dog. They only thought a heavy rain was coming, and hurried home to collect their clothes. Alas, 7,000 years, by Teng Zijing's bedside, you suppressed the radiant white light naturally, emanating from your body. Inside, Demon's cultivation has a minor hurdle every 100 years, and a major hurdle every 1,000 years. Now you have officially entered the 7,000-year mark of cultivation, another transformation compared to over 6,000 years. 6,900-year-old demon could be suppressed by you with a single paw. The difference of one step is like ascending to heaven. If it were any other demon, the transition from 6,900 years to 7,000 years. They would inevitably have to undergo an incredibly terrifying heavenly tribulation. But because of your unique nature, you temporarily had no heavenly tribulation, which was a huge stroke of luck. However, you couldn't be happy because you had reached 7,000 years of cultivation, and Teng Zijing was almost 90 years old. That was the end of his life. It was clearly written in the book of life and death. Bays, is it going to rain? Teng Zijing seemed to be awakened by the thunder, and weakly sat up to ask. It's heavy rain, you replied. Bays, I don't like rain. I'm afraid of the cold. Teng Zijing's consciousness was not very clear at this time. Sometimes he was like a child. Then it won't rain. Sleep, you said gently, as if coaxing a child. Really? Then I'll sleep, Teng Zijing said, and lay back down, as your cultivation reached 7,000 years. The fire of mortal desires above Bailing Prefecture City was completely suppressed by you. Before, it could still stir a little, but now it couldn't even stir. To cultivators, there were no demons here. From now on, as long as you don't actively make your presence known, no cultivator would suspect there were demons here. Another 2 months passed. On this day, Teng Zijing could no longer hold on. His life force was completely exhausted. But before his death, he was not muddled and confused, as he had been in the previous months, momentarily unclear. But instead, he became lucid in a final burst of clarity. He summoned all his relatives and descendants to his side, and one by one, gave them his last instructions. Finally, he asked everyone to leave the room. Only you remained in the room. He looked at you, his gaze gentle as water. This life has finally come to an end. In my youth, my family was poor. In my adolescence, I studied diligently. In my youth, I passed the imperial examination with flying colors, full of vigor. In my middle age, I was successful in officialdom, wielding power. In my old age, I was demoted to Bailing Prefecture, but I also enjoyed the joys of family life. Logically speaking, I have no regrets in this life. Children and grandchildren have their own fortunes, and I am not worried about them. But I can't stop worrying about you. Bai Zi, my good brother, I know you've become a demon. You will live forever in this world, in the countless springs and autumns to come, through winters and summers. I wonder if anyone will miss you or care for you. Will you be lonely by yourself? If only I could. I truly wish I could stay with you forever. But alas, I can no longer do that. You accompanied me throughout my entire life, but I can only walk with you this far. From now on, you must walk the path alone. Finally, he looked at his good brother with a gentle smile, carrying a blessing for Bai Zi. The human world is beautiful. You must go and see it properly. After speaking, his eyes slowly closed, but the smile on his face seemed to be frozen in place and did not disappear. You looked at the old man, who seemed to be asleep, and lowered your head in silence. Scene after scene from the past began to surface in your mind. In a dilapidated temple, the poor scholar cupped the dirty puppy in his hands, looked into your eyes and said, "From now on, you shall be called Bai Zi." On the mountain path, one man and one dog ate and slept in the open. Braving the elements, they journeyed forward through biting wind and heavy snow, leaving 2 long trails of footprints on the snow. In the woodshed of an inn in the capital, you split a cold steamed bun in half to share. Teng Zijing shivered from the cold, holding you, who was also trembling, and asked, "Bai Zi, are you cold?" When his name was announced on the Imperial Examinations Golden List, Teng Zijing excitedly picked you up, crying, Bai Zi, we finally made it through. You'll never have to suffer from cold or hunger again." On his wedding night, Teng Zijing instructed his wife, "Bai Zi is my brother. You must treat him as family." When his child was born, Teng Zijing held the child and smiled at you, saying, "Bai Zi, you're going to be an uncle." When he achieved success and prominence, Teng Zijing stood with you by the cliff edge, full of vigor and spirit, saying, "Bai Zi, look at these magnificent mountains and rivers. Aren't they beautiful?" Later, when he was demoted, Teng Zijing smiled bitterly at you and said, "Old pal, you'll have to accompany me to a remote place." When his youngest daughter got married, Teng Zijing took you to his daughter's in-law's house to attend the wedding banquet and introduced you to guests from all directions, saying, "This is my little girl's uncle." When his granddaughter was learning to speak, he knelt in front of the little girl, kindly teaching his granddaughter, "This is Grandpa Bai." Scene after scene from the past flashed continuously in your mind, finally converging into a single clear tear. 70 years is truly a long time. You let out a furious roar towards the sky. This mighty roar shook heaven and earth. The world changed color. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, with flashes of lightning and rumbling thunder. The entire Bailing County city turned dark, and then heavy rain poured down. This downpour seemed to be unleashing all your emotions. Teng Zijing disliked rain, so Bailing County city rarely had rain. So, let it rain enough after he's gone. This heavy rain lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, until the streets were almost submerged, and the Bailing River was about to overflow before it stopped. Everyone was astonished beyond compare. Such a torrential rain was a rare sight. Once in 100 years, within these 3 days, many cultivators noticed this undisguised demonic aura and came in groups to investigate. However, after sensing that terrifying demonic aura that made heaven and earth change color, they all turned pale and fled in terror. You, This peerless great demon, who had resided in Bailing County City for over 20 years, had always carefully hidden yourself, trying your best not to clash with cultivators. It wasn't that you feared anyone, nor that you couldn't afford to provoke anyone, but simply that you didn't want to disappoint that person. Now that he is gone, who else in this world can make you bow your head? On the fourth day, above Bailing County City, a tall monk riding a lion arrived. He wore a golden cassia, revealing half of his bare chest. On his right arm, he wore a golden hoop, and behind his head, there was a brilliant halo, like a muscular bodhisattva. He spread open his right hand. The golden alms bowl in his hand flew out, rapidly expanding. In just a few breaths, it covered more than half of Bailing County City, obscuring the sky and blocking out the sun. Within that golden alms bowl, a golden galaxy seemed to be spinning, releasing terrifying sharpness. Aimed only at demons, the demonic aura swirling in the sky was like ocean water, continuously being drawn into the golden alms bowl. It was even searching for the source of those demonic auras. But then, the next moment, a spiritual voice rang out. That golden alms bowl seemed to be struck by an immense force, letting out a clang as it flew away, rapidly shrinking and disappearing into the horizon. Not only that, the tall monk riding the lion was also struck by that force. Cracks instantly appeared all over his body, and golden blood gushed out, and the golden halo behind his head shattered into pieces. He himself flew backward tens of miles, and the lion he was riding exploded on the spot, turning into a mist of blood in the sky. A peerless great demon, the tall monk, stabilizing himself in the sky tens of miles away. His face changed dramatically. Then he turned and fled, disappearing into the horizon. A few more days passed, and it was Teng Zijing's burial day. In front of the mourning hall, you lay on the ground, looked up at the sky, and murmured to yourself, "Once the funeral is over, I should leave too." Although the cultivators who came in the short term were not worth mentioning, there were indeed powerful figures in this world. Over the years, you had gained some rough understanding of human cultivators. Human cultivators were mainly from the Buddhist and Taoist sects, and their combat power was based on their cultivation level. However, unlike demons, their cultivation level was not measured by years of cultivation, but by their cultivation techniques. 3 more days passed. After the funeral was over, Teng Zijing was buried, but not in Bailing County, but in Chunjiang County, because Teng Zijing's ancestral home was Chunjiang County, and the ancients believed in fallen leaves returning to their roots. By the Chunjiang River, a tomb made of white marble was erected on the grassland. The words "Tomb of Young Master Teng Zijing" were carved on the tombstone. Teng Zhengchen and his wife, Teng Kinking, Teng Yuxiu and Zhang Wulei, all knelt before the tomb, sorrowfully kowtowing several times. You, on the other hand, stood to the side of the tombstone with a solemn expression, as if witnessing this scene. After a long while, Teng Yuxiu looked at the Chunjiang River nearby and said worriedly, "This burial site was chosen by father during his lifetime, but the terrain is a bit low, and the Chunjiang River often floods." I'm worried. Teng Zhengchen sighed. Indeed, the feng shui of this land is quite good. It's an excellent ox-cotton land, said to bring prosperity to descendants, but it's easily washed away by floods. There have been many such cases in the past. Alas, originally, I found a geomantically auspicious spot on Qingfeng Mountain in the suburbs for my father-in-law, and the price was already agreed upon. But father-in-law said the wise find joy in water and insisted on being buried by the river. Zhang Wulei also shook his head helplessly. Just then, a calm and low voice rang out. The few people were greatly startled, looking left and right. Finally, their gazes converged on you, revealing expressions of disbelief. Teng Zhengchen stared blankly and said, "Uncle Bai, you spoke, you did not reply, but under the gaze of the few people, you walked step by step behind them, stopping about 10 paces in front of the tomb. Then you raised your right forepaw and drew a line on the ground. From this day forward, the water level of Chunjiang River shall not cross this boundary." Without opening your mouth, didn't open his mouth, but a voice echoed. The voice was calm and steady. It seemed self-evident, yet carried immense majesty, as if your words were natural law. The spring river ahead seemed to possess a person, standing on the river surface, just like boiling water bubbling and surging in a pot. The few people watched this scene with wide-open mouths. They had an inexplicable premonition in their hearts. Perhaps from now on, the waters of Spring River truly could not cross that line. Even if a flood dragon entered the sea, or flood surged, they would have to bypass that line, bypassing the small tomb standing by the river. A long time later, the few people recovered from their shock. You looked at them and said, "I will retreat to the mountains and forests. If you have any troubles you cannot resolve in the future, you may call out to me in your hearts." After you broke through 7,000 years of cultivation, not only could you speak with your primordial spirit, but you also gained a miraculous ability. As long as someone you cared about called out to you in their heart, you would be able to sense it. "Uncle Bai, are you really leaving? You can live with us," Teng Zhengchen said reluctantly. "That's right. We will all treat you like we treat father." Teng Yuxiu also pursed her lips and said, "Grandpa Bai, I don't want you to go. Grandpa is already gone. Don't leave me." Teng Kinking burst into tears. You walked over, gently patted Teng Kinking's head and said, Kinking, be good and grow up well. Study hard, strive to become a renowned, talented woman in the future. Grandpa Bai will be proud of you too." Teng Kinking wiped away her tears, then nodded heavily. Pouting, she said, I will do it. In her clear and innocent eyes, there was a hint of stubbornness and persistence. You looked at Tang Yuxiu again and said, Yuxiu, you are already pregnant. Aren't you? Your fate is already noble, but I didn't expect your son to be even more extraordinary, with the Zue star shining brightly. He is destined for greatness. Uncle Bai, is this truly so? You glanced at him, wanting to say something, but ultimately held back. Since fate could not be changed, why speak it out and cause worry and fear? Living well in the present was the most important thing. Take care. All of you. You took a deep breath and said in a low voice. Then you turned and slowly walked towards the distance. The few people all knelt down towards your retreating figure, except for Zhang Wulei, who was relatively strong. The others all shed tears, and Tang Kinking cried uncontrollably as the few people watched with tear-blurred eyes. That snow-white figure on the lush green grass walked further and further away until it vanished on the horizon. Cloud Mist Mountain was the same mountain. You and Teng Zijing passed by. On your way to the capital, the mountain was shrouded in mist year-round and rarely visited by people, and there was an old mansion in the mountain. On this day, the beautiful woman in red was sitting cross-legged deep within the old mansion, meditating and resting. Suddenly, she opened her eyes, her expression changing drastically. Her body flickered, and she already appeared at the main entrance. She saw a large snow-white dog standing at the foot of the steps in front of the main gate. Your Excellency, why are you? Madame Hung's voice trembled as she spoke with trepidation. You said in a low voice, my worldly affairs are concluded. With nowhere else to go, I wish to stay here with you. Is that all right? Madame Hung's body trembled violently. Is it not all right, you sighed? No, no. No, for your excellency to be willing to grace my humble abode is a blessing this concubine has cultivated for 10 lifetimes. This concubine is overjoyed. I couldn't be happier. Your excellency, please come in. Madame Hung quickly put on a smile. Rest assured, I will not stay for nothing. At crucial moments, I will offer you some guidance, allowing you to avoid some detours. You calmly said, thank you for your excellency's kindness. Madame Hung said excitedly. This time, she was truly excited. With such an unfathomable grand figure giving guidance, one could indeed avoid many detours. Time passed without notice in the mountains, but in the human world, it was a vast ocean of suffering, with endless worldly troubles. In the 5th year of your reclusive life, the emperor of the great Ying kingdom, for his ridiculous ambition of eternal dominion, launched a war against the Eastern Court Kingdom. This war lasted for a full 5 years. Heavy taxes were levied. Able-bodied men were frantically conscripted, leaving countless villages with 9 out of 10 homes empty. You even saw with your divine eye some fathers, in the prime of their lives, in order to avoid being conscripted to the battlefield, with tears streaming down their faces, deliberately used stones to break their own legs, because once they became disabled, they wouldn't have to go to their deaths. As countless common people died in battle, the national fortune of the great Ying kingdom crumbled. The worldly flame that could suppress evil spirits rapidly dimmed and weakened. Thus, the world fell into great chaos, with demons and monsters running rampant. Even reclusive Taoists and monks emerged from the mountains, but they could not kill all the blood-soaked creatures that proliferated like a tide across the land. You, sitting atop Cloud Mist Mountain, overlooked this human world ravaged by suffering, and only let out a deep sigh. You possessed 7,000 years of heaven-reaching cultivate. You could easily crush 1,000-year-old great demons, yet you could not restore this collapsing mortal world, because only by ending the war and rekindling the worldly flame of civilization could there be any hope for this human realm. Finally, in the 10th year, the great Ying kingdom fell. There was no sorrow or indignation over the nation's demise. Instead, countless common people embraced each other amidst the ruins, shouting, heaven has opened its eyes. Finally, peace. And in the golden city of the great Ying kingdom, the golden dragon of national fortune wailed and dissipated. The high and mighty emperor, with disheveled hair, in the empty imperial court, desperately brandished his long sword, with tears streaming down his face. He cried out to the heavens, I truly regret my past actions. Duke Qin, Duke Teng, it turns out you were right all along. He slit his own throat and collapsed into a pool of blood, but death was not his liberation. 2 grim-faced soul reapers rose from underground, coldly staring at his corpse. You truly deserve 10,000 deaths. At the very least, you must suffer punishment in the 18 layers of hell for 10,000 years. Teng Zijing, did you see the imperial tower that banished you to Bailing Commandery back then? And I am still on this mountain, guarding the beautiful land you left to me. In the 10 years since Teng Zijing left, the human world had turned into a purgatory. The great Ying kingdom was destroyed. Wars raged continuously. The worldly flame dimmed, and countless evil spirits seized the opportunity to slaughter humanity. You kept your promise to him from back then. You watched over this beautiful land for him. You hid in the shadows, transforming into a bright moon, illuminating all directions. Every time you acted, it was with dazzling white light, suppressing countless peerless great demons that brought chaos to the human world. The world did not know who you were, only regarding you as a life-saving deity, respectfully calling you heavenly venerate Bai for a lifetime. But you didn't care about merits or false fame. You just felt that this world was the world he had desperately tried to protect back then. Finally, On this day, black clouds rolled back above Cloud Mist Mountain. Your vast and boundless Dharma form rose from the ground. You broke through a full 8,000 years of cultivation. You suddenly opened your eyes, your originally clear and profound eyes, instantly transformed into suffocating heart fire. The heart divine ability. Blood scheme. Once the blood scheme was activated, 10,000 demons would come to pay homage. With just a single thought from you, all the demons in the world would be at your command, becoming puppets, but just as you had stepped into such a heaven-reaching realm. In your heart, you suddenly heard a heartbreaking call. It was Tang Zijing's daughter, Peng Yuxiu. In these 10 years, even when the war was at its most brutal, the Tang family never once called out to you, fearing they would bring karmic trouble upon you. But at this moment, his voice was filled with nothing but heartbreaking despair. You didn't hesitate for a moment. With a single step, you traversed vast distances. You instantly crossed thousands of miles of space, arriving at General Chun's Xianxia marquee residence. The courtyard full of white mourning cloths stung your eyes. You made no attempt to conceal your divine might. Stepping on a bath of pure white light, you walked step by step into the mourning hall. The guards who tried to stop you, and all the guests in the hall, under the invisible, subtle pressure of you, an 8,000-year-old great demon, were instantly frozen solid, their eyes wide with shock in the hall. Yet, you withdrew all your sharpness and silently walked to the front of the mourning hall. Tang Yuxiu was kneeling there, dressed in mourning clothes. Beside him knelt a boy of about 10 years old. The little boy, Bai Shu, also dressed in mourning. Tang Yuxiu suddenly lunged forward, tightly embracing your snow-white neck, crying heartbrokenly that man had died in battle. In the great war of the past 10 years, Zhang Wulei was brave and skilled in battle, achieving illustrious military feats. His military rank continuously rose, eventually becoming the commander of an army. He even attained the title of Marquis amidst the flames of war. But now, this young, righteous, and renowned general ultimately sacrificed himself for the nation. You didn't speak, merely extending a paw, and gently patted Tang Yuxiu's back. After a long while, he wiped away his tears, and pulling the confused little boy beside him, said, "Huizi, this is your second maternal granduncle. Quickly, greet him." The little boy obediently called out, "Second maternal granduncle." You extended a paw and gently patted the top of his head, your gaze warm and benevolent. The little boy gasped, instinctively wanting to say, "This dog can actually talk," but under Tang Yuxiu's glare, he was so scared that he clapped a hand over his mouth and shrank his head back. He was 10 years old this year, yet had barely seen his father a few times. He wasn't particularly saddened by his father's death in battle, only finding kneeling here tiring and boring. You looked at him, smiled, and shook your head. Not minding, you turned to look at Tang Yuxiu, softly asking him what trouble he had encountered. Hearing this, Tang Yuxiu's, the body's sudden legacy, sorrow again welled up from within. Covering his mouth, he began to sob. "Uncle Bai, I dreamed of Wulei. He sat in an unbalanced film, in a desert where it was always twilight. He said he wanted to come back to see me and our child, but he couldn't return. His soul couldn't return." A thoughtful expression appeared in your eyes. Having lived in seclusion on Cloud Mist Mountain these past years, you had indeed heard such legends from Lady Hong, because Lady Hong herself was a female ghost with 3,000 years of cultivation. According to Lady Hong, on large battlefields, when the number of fallen soldiers reaches a certain scale, the iron-blooded malevolent energy and the resentful energy of kings merge together, condensing into a blood fiend spiritual sword, binding the souls of the deceased. If no cultivators come to guide them, they will remain trapped there, unable to return home, unable to reincarnate. However, the iron-blooded malevolent energy of the battlefield is harmful to cultivators. Therefore, most cultivators are unwilling to undertake such thankless and arduous tasks. Many ancient battlefields, even after many years, still feel eerie and sinister, causing a chill down one's spine upon approach, because the souls of those who died in battle have been bound there all this time, never finding release. Uncle Bai, you know what's going on, don't you? A glimmer of hope appeared in Tang Yuxiu's eyes. He looked at his uncle expectantly. His soul is bound by the battlefield. I can intervene and guide him back. You said, "Is there any risk?" Tang Yuxiu asked nervously. Her husband was already dead. She didn't want her uncle to also fall into danger. For others, perhaps the risk would be great. But for you, it's merely a simple task. You calmly shook your head. The easternmost part of Dongbao Kingdom's territory lay a vast desert. This was originally the buffer zone between the Great Ying Kingdom and the Daunting Kingdom, but it became the battlefield for the decisive war. The two nations fought a battle here to determine their fate. This battle was extremely brutal. The Great Ying Kingdom's 600,000-strong army was completely annihilated here, and although the Daunting Kingdom won, it was a Pyrrhic victory, also losing 400,000 troops here. Truly, a million corpses lay scattered. Blood stained more than half of the desert red. When the sun rose, the blood mixed in the sand grains evaporated, as if a great crimson mist was rising, staining the sky red. From a distance, it looked especially terrifying. Yet, in this seemingly empty desert, another world was actually hidden, a world belonging to kings, the Blood Fiend Zero realm. Here, it was always twilight. The setting sun was like blood, staining the entire desert orange-red. Smoke signals drifted straight up into the sky, connecting with the golden glow across the heavens. Grand and desolate, save me. I want to go home. I want to go home. From beneath the yellow sand came waves of hoarse and chilling sounds, as if from people on their deathbeds, their throats choked with thick phlegm, emitting strange wails. Looking closely, there were arms and faceless visages reaching out from beneath the yellow sand, as if someone was struggling in mud. The yellow sand was like a sea, and in this boundless sea, a few reefs stood tall. Those were the undulating sand dunes. At the top of one of these sand dunes sat a lonely figure. His right hand rested on a long sword. His head bowed. A crimson cloak fluttered fiercely behind him. He was Zhang Wulei. A low and mournful ballad seemed to emanate from his bowed head and mouth, drifting over the boundless yellow sand. A sense of desolation spread throughout this twilight world. Here, time seemed not to flow. It was always the same. They were trapped here, neither living nor dead, never to be reborn. He had struggled, served, and even broken down in tears. Finally, like the other departed souls, he despaired, numb, as if reduced to a walking corpse. Sitting here motionless, he hummed a lifeless ballad. Wuxia, I truly long to see you again. The low voice intermittently escaped his lips, as if it were the last words. He spoke before turning into a puppet. This was his final obsession. Once this obsession dissipated, he too would become like the other departed souls, sliding down from the sand dune, his facial features vanishing, like a skeleton, aimlessly struggling in that endless sea of yellow sand. Fortunately, just then, Zhang Wulei heard what seemed like a peal of thunder from the high heavens. A deep and majestic voice was calling his name. His body trembled slightly. Then, like a puppet, he stiffly and slowly raised his head to look up at the sky. His expression was numb, his eyes somewhat dull, as if all his will was about to be eroded by this world, to fall into a state of aimlessness. With a rumble, from high above, a furry, snow-white giant paw pierced through the golden evening clouds filling the sky. Reaching down from above, the enormous paw penetrated the sea of golden clouds, and on its claws, it carried wisps of golden cloud haze, like a floating ribbon of white riding. Glimmer of spirit appeared in Zhang Wulei's eyes. He let out a low cry, then watched as the claw scooped him up, and as his body left the sand dune, slowly ascending into the sky. His gaze quickly focused, as if his consciousness was returning. Finally, he completely broke free from that muddled, feverish state. He looked up at the sky and pleaded, Uncle Bai, they are all pitiful people. Can you take them with us? Some of the departed souls below were his comrades, while others were enemies. But whether friend or foe, he hoped to take these people away from suffering as well, because he himself had experienced that kind of despair. He knew what kind of despair it was, what kind of eternal damnation. Since they were already here, it was a matter of course. The next moment, a huge white mouth emerged from the clouds, then suddenly opened wide, as if to swallow heaven and earth. A terrifying sharp aura was released from its mouth. In its mouth, a massive blood-red current formed. The countless departed souls below continuously flew into the mouth. After an unknown period of time, the million departed souls in this blood-fiend realm were all swallowed by you. Let's go. The huge claw and mouth slowly ascended, just like a cat's paw that had scooped up tadpoles, slowly withdrawing from a fish tank when you retracted your divine might, and once again lay prone in the desert of the real world. The howling sandstorm couldn't even approach you. Within 10 meters, you shook off the dust from your body and spread open your paw. The 1 million departed souls who had once lost their senses and were muddled and bewildered finally left the blood-fiend realm. They regained their consciousness and appearance, each one with tears welling up in their eyes, and uniformly knelt before you. The large white dog, thank you, great immortal, for guiding us. Your immense kindness and virtue will never be forgotten. You smiled indifferently. You always acted on impulse. You never sought the gratitude of these mortals. But just then, above the battlefield, a sudden change occurred. Countless blood-fiend Kai gathered into a blood-red ocean with towering waves, enough to terrify countless cultivators to death. But you didn't feel a hint of danger. You were suddenly bewildered. This ocean of blood-fiend Kai was originally formed from the will of these military souls. Now, their gratitude, coming from their very souls, caused this originally violent sea of blood to boil. As it churned, this sea of blood precipitated a wisp of the purest blood-red essence, flying directly towards your glabella. In your chaotic mind, like the universe at its inception, the event awakened that bead, that magical bead, which granted you 100-fold cultivation speed. The bead shone brightly, and in your mind, it forcibly dug out a path, a tunnel leading to an unknown spacetime. Your primordial spirit stepped into it, and found that from the crack in the stone wall at the end of the tunnel, incredibly pure iron blood fiend Kai was seeping out. That was a peerless power that only human armies could condense. You instantly understood. This magical bead had directly dug a tunnel to the human races. Lair of destiny, you always prided yourself on being upright and honorable. How could you do such a despicable thing as allow Liu stealing from home? Though you sighed with a touch of heroic sentiment, the triviality of past scruples, then decisively summoned Wolverine's claws and began frantically mining. What a joke! A heaven-sent opportunity was right before your eyes. Only a fool wouldn't seize it. What's more, you were truly ruthless now. You dug laboriously in your mind for a long time, and when you breathlessly withdrew, only an instant had passed in the real world. You, looking at the 1 million eagerly awaiting departed souls in your palm-sized world, softly asked, "Are you afraid of monsters?" The departed souls were startled at first. Then they all laughed. were not even afraid of death. What kind of demons or monsters in this world could be more terrifying than that despair-inducing twilight world? You nodded. All right then, I will summon monsters to send you back to your homeland. You slowly ascended into the sky. A terrifying aura, like heavenly might, erupted with a roar. Black clouds frantically gathered above the firmament, with lightning flashing and thunder rumbling. You let out a furious roar that shook mountains and rivers. Blood pupils, open in an instant. Your eyes turned scarlet, and within the black clouds of the celestial dome, a massive blood-red eye, spanning several thousand meters, opened a vast, invisible way. Like a tsunami, instantly swept across 10 Lai, 100 Lai, 1,000 Lai, the East Island Nation, and all the demons across several thousand Lai within the East Pavilion Nation had their minds forcibly controlled by you at this moment. And so, extremely shocking and absurd scene appeared in the mortal world. By the small river, a green carp demon, listening to a maiden's heartfelt confession, instantly had its eyes turned scarlet, burst out of the river, transformed into a flood dragon, and soared into the sky. In the deep mountains, strong woodcutter wearing a bamboo hat, enthusiastically giving directions to a passerby. His eyes turned red, directly shot up from the ground, and vanished into the horizon, scaring the passerby into kneeling and exclaiming immortal. In the marketplace, an old storyteller, about to receive his reward money, desperately held onto his last shred of consciousness, shouted, "Please see the next installment for the continuation." Then, with scarlet eyes, slipped into a corner and disappeared without a trace inside the private school in the county town. The teacher, a second ago, was still gently asking the students to study independently. The next second, as soon as he stepped out the door, he fell to the ground with scarlet eyes, then howled and rushed into the sky like a mad dog. The more they resisted as an 8,000-year-old great demon, the more they would suffer a beating. That day, countless great demons were forcibly pulled out by your blood-red eyes. They rode rolling black clouds, covering the sky and earth, just to pave a path for the million heroic souls in your palm to return to their homeland. Once the blood pupils opened, 10,000 demons came to pay homage. Above the desert, countless monsters continuously gathered, with demonic kai soaring to the sky for hundreds of miles around, and black clouds shrouding everything. These monsters, each with blood-red eyes, had completely lost their consciousness. Now their bodies were all controlled by you. It was as if they were sleepwalking. Many monsters, on their way here, encountered cultivators trying to intercept them. But now, you were acting through them. You used your narrow victory, divine ability, to project your own power onto them, easily suppressing the cultivators blocking their way. It was essentially you fighting on their behalf. Your punch, with 8,000 years of cultivation. Who could withstand it? Many monsters, among these 100,000 demons. Is this immortal a demon? The million departed souls were all dumbfounded. Looking around, there were monsters everywhere, in the sky and on the ground, filling the entire world. Moreover, many monsters maintained their human forms. If they all revealed their massive true forms, it's feared that even 100 Lai radius wouldn't be able to contain them. You have 1,000,000 people. There are 100,000 monsters here. You will form groups of 10. I will have them send you home. You said, a hint of weariness in your voice, simultaneously controlling 100,000 great demons. Even you were extremely drained of mental energy. What's more, there were many thousand-year-old great demons among them, some even 4,000 or 5,000 years old. Thank you, Immortal. Your great kindness, Immortal, will never be forgotten. May the immortal achieve true immortality soon. Everyone expressed their thanks. The last sentence carried a hint of trepidation, but it was the most sincere blessing. They weren't fools. They also knew that this immortal was not a true immortal, but a formidable great demon. However, they sincerely hoped that this benefactor could achieve true cultivation and become a peerless demon immortal. You felt an invisible power spread throughout your body, as if a wisp of clear breeze swept away the dust from your spiritual platform. To achieve clarity of mind, you shook your head and smiled. So there really is karma in this world. Soon, the monsters revealed their enormous true forms one by one. Then, carrying these departed souls, they flew towards their hometowns, like fallen leaves returning to their roots. Perhaps they could still see their loved ones one last time. As for you, you lay prostrate in the sand dune, closing your eyes. All your mind and spirit were focused on these monsters, simultaneously controlling 100,000 great demons remotely. It was something that consumed a lot of mental energy, and also a lot of demonic power. What's more, if human cultivators blocked their way, they would have to fight, which would consume even more. 3 days later, all the departed souls were sent back to their hometowns. You finally deactivated the blood scheme, divine ability, and granted those monsters their freedom. You lifted your head from the sand dune, and gently exhaled. Then, to Zhang Wulei, who was still sitting in your palm. World, you said, let's go. I'll take you home. After saying that, you soared into the air and flew towards the distance. Your consumption this time was too great. Your demonic power was almost completely depleted, so you couldn't use the near at hand, yet worlds away divine ability. While flying consumed very little, you could completely, during the flight, rapidly recover your demonic power. Late at night, at the Marquis Zhang Yang's manor in Spring General. Tang Yuxiu looked at the familiar figure opposite him. It remained silent for a long time. Then, tears streamed down his face. Husband, finally. His trembling lips were like a dam breaking. He cried loudly and lunged towards Zhang Wulei, but grasped at empty air. His body trembled. His gaze became even more mournful. 10 years. Life and death. Both vast and unknown. No need to think. Yet impossible to forget. Now, after finally meeting again, with great difficulty, they were already separated by life and death. Yuxiu, I am already content to have seen you once. It's just that in the days to come, I can only ask you to endure walking on alone. Zhang Wulei said with a forced smile. His gaze was incredibly gentle. This was the iron-blooded tenderness of a renowned general. Tang Yuxiu only wept. His body trembled. Unable to speak, his heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife. He even wanted to follow him, but he still had to take care of their child. So he had to leave. Gradually, on the ground in the courtyard, 2 wisps of black smoke rose, transforming into 2 soul reapers. One of them said, Zhang Wulei, it's time to go. The couple's bodies trembled, both revealing deep reluctance. Unwilling yet helpless, the cycle of life and death. Who can escape it? Wait a little longer. A calm voice came from the side. The 2 soul reapers turned their heads to look, only to see a large white dog standing there. Monster, one of them asked in surprise. You could say that you said calmly. Chuckling, a mere little demon that hasn't even taken human form dares to interfere with our affairs of the Underworld Yinsi. You've got a lot of nerve. That person sneered. With a bang, the next moment, an invisible force directly pressed him to the ground. His soul almost disintegrated on the spot. Great Immortal, spare my life. Great Immortal, spare my life. That soul reaper let out a terrified plea for mercy. The moment the other party made a move, he saw the reality clearly. This was absolutely not someone he could afford to provoke. The other soul reaper also trembled, cupped his fists and said, Great Immortal, please calm your anger. It's not that we were careless. We were truly acting on orders and dared not disobey. We knew Zhang Wulei's father-in-law had a grudge with the city god. The city god refused to be lenient. After learning that Zhang Wulei's soul had returned, he immediately ordered us to come and reap his soul. Hold on, you suddenly frowned. Looking at him, you asked, who did you just say Zhang Wulei's father-in-law was? That soul reaper's body trembled and truthfully replied, his name is Teng Zijing. His ancestral home is Spring General. It is said that he once served as a high official in the capital. You narrowed your eyes and asked, you said he had a grudge with the city god. What grudge? Teng Zijing, how is he now? The Soul Reaper sensed that the atmosphere was wrong and became even more frightened, but dared not conceal anything. When Teng Zijing was young, he was an official in the capital. He once brought down a political rival, which led to this rival's entire family being executed. And this political rival was the city god's 8th generation descendant. Teng Zijing caused the city god's line of descendants to be cut off. Therefore, the city god resolved to take revenge on him. Ever since Teng Zijing died, his soul has been held captive in the great prison of Teju, Underworld Yinsi, suffering torture daily. The city god said he would be held for at least 100 years, before being released to the netherworld for reincarnation. Bastard, terrible light shot from your eyes, causing this soul reaper's soul to tremble violently, almost exploding on the spot. Great Immortal, please calm your anger. The soul reaper, terrified, quickly kowtowed. You reined in your gaze, then looked up at the bright moon in the sky. Tears unknowingly streamed down your face. It's been 10 years. I knew it. Why haven't I seen you reincarnate in 10 years? Though you've been suffering in the Underworld Yinsi all this time. Your heart trembled, convulsed, an indescribable force fermented in your heart, rising deep within you. It seemed as if a voice was roaring. Even the demonic power around your body became somewhat uncontrollable. Suddenly, the water jar in the corner of the wall began to tremble. The water inside seemed to be dancing. The roof tiles also vibrated violently. The wind chimes hanging under the eaves rang out impatiently. Wind blew in the sky. Dark clouds obscured the moon. Teju Underworld Yinsi, Teju City God. A long while later, all the commotion in the courtyard subsided. The clouds dispersed in the sky, and the mist cleared. Moonlight once again spilled down. You turned and walked out of the courtyard. Uncle Bai, what are you going to do? Uncle Bai, don't be impulsive. Teng Yuxiu and Zhang Wulei panicked regarding the power of the Yin and Yang realms. They had heard a little about it. Attacking the Underworld Yinsi was a violation of heavenly laws. What exactly heavenly laws were, and who enforced them, they did not know, but they knew it was very serious. Just who is this person? The 2 Underworld Yin ghost officers trembled, asking Teng Yuxiu and the other person. However, no one answered them. Zhang Wulei took a deep breath. Staring at the 2, he said coldly, for great disturbance truly occurs in the Underworld Yinsi. When the superiors inquire, I hope you'll be sensible and remain silent. Otherwise, you will be held accountable. Yes, the 2 could only shiver. If something truly happened, they would indeed bear great responsibility. After all, it was they who leaked the information. Stay here with me for now. Once the outcome over there is clear, I'll go with you to the Underworld Yinsi. Then you can say, you were held up by something on the way. Zhang Wulei said, Taking the initiative, Teju Underworld Yinsi. This was a world belonging to kings, the entire Teju's 12 prefectures, tens of millions of common people. After death, their souls would all come here, then pass through the gate of the Underworld to the Netherworld for reincarnation. At this moment, the sky above the Underworld Yinsi was a hazy gray, and on the roads and buildings below, eerie blue ghost fires floated. On the road paved with white bones, Underworld Yin officers were chanting requiems, maintaining order among the departed souls. These departed souls would proceed straight into the gate of the Underworld. And the Underworld Yinsi also had a great prison. Its purpose was to detain those who refused to peacefully depart, who wanted to cause trouble in the Underworld Yinsi, or even deluded themselves into thinking they could return to the living world. Such malevolent spirits would generally be locked in cells and tortured for a period. If they became obedient, they would be sent to the Netherworld. If not, the torture would continue. At this moment, in Teju Underworld Yinsi, inside the large prison, piercing screams rose and fell. But in the deepest cell, it was exceptionally quiet. A young scholar with disheveled hair was tied to a wooden stake. His prisoner's clothes were tattered. Bloodstains crisscrossed his body. It was precisely Teng Zijing. If a person dies with integrity in their heart, their soul will transform into their youthful appearance. Until now, do you know regret now? The city god of Teju, dressed in official robes, stood before the dying Teng Zijing and asked condescendingly. Teng Zijing tremblingly raised his head. His voice was weak, yet fearless. He said with powerful conviction, "Where my heart leads, I will never regret. Even unto death, what a never regret. Even unto death." The city god of Teju roared in anger. "You still don't think you're wrong? Did my 8-year-old grandson really deserve to die like that?" Teng Zijing let out a scoffing laugh and looked at him sarcastically. "You are also an official. Whether one deserves to die is clearly written in the law. You ask me, how dare you?" The city god of Teju was enraged and humiliated. He picked up the whip from the imperial guard beside him and began to lash out. With every lash, a new bloody mark appeared on Teng Zijing's body. Yet, Teng Zijing merely smiled disdainfully and never let out a scream. Scholars may be powerless to tie up a chicken, but they possess unyielding integrity. This city god, refuse to believe I cannot subdue you." He threw the whip aside and was about to go to a nearby shelf to fetch more vicious torture instruments. However, at this very moment, the entire Yinsi began to shake. "What's happening?" The city god's face changed drastically. He looked up. His gaze seemed to penetrate the roof of the prison cell, seeing the eternally dim and unchanging sky of Yinsi. In that hazy gray sky, countless gray mists swiftly gathered towards one spot, eventually forming a massive vortex. As the vortex spun, fierce winds swept in all directions. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. What happened? Such a suffocating sense of oppression. My soul is about to tear apart. Someone is causing a huge disturbance in Yinsi. Countless wandering souls let out piercing screams and then collapsed to the ground, trembling. Even the underworld emissaries were no exception. The next moment, a radiant full moon slowly descended from within that massive, swirling vortex. Instantly, scorching white light illuminated all directions. With an incredibly overbearing posture, it lit up this land of eternal night. Under this white light, countless eerie buildings, like ice and snow, rapidly melted away, or like mud walls in the desert, turning to dust and vanishing in the wind. The prison cells holding numerous evil spirits also seemed to be made of paper, rapidly turning into ash from the roof downwards. Who dares to trespass into the underworld? Are you not afraid of violating heavenly laws? The city god of Teju stood, head raised, and rebuked. However, the next moment, he felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. His knees slammed hard onto the ground. The floor cracked and caved in 2 feet deep. You dare to humiliate an underworld deity consecrated by the Netherworld. Your crime is unspeakable. You will descend to the 18 layers of hell. The city god of Teju roared frantically. However, the next moment, his head exploded, then his entire body shattered and collapsed from top to bottom, finally turning into a pile of dust. The city god is dead too. Those underworld emissaries and souls, each was so terrified their souls nearly scattered. Even a great figure like the city god died without even seeing the other party's face. What kind of terrifying existence has come this time? Will the other party spare them? At this moment, all the souls in the entire Yinsi were suppressed by that scorching white light, except for Teng Zijing. That radiant full moon slowly retracted, its light no longer so dazzling, and rapidly shrank, finally landing in front of Teng Zijing. "I'm sorry. I came late," you said softly, looking at the young Teng Zijing. "I didn't want you to come," Teng Zijing said with a complex expression. Then he stretched out his right hand and slowly placed it on your forehead, just like 68 years ago by Willow Lake. That spirited young man, King Shan Rushi, also stroked the big white dog's head like this. "But I'm already here," you said softly. "Come with me. I know a place where you can evade the underworld's pursuit and allow your soul to exist eternally in the world." Teng Zijing shook his head, looking at you with gentle yet resolute eyes. Smiling, "I'm very happy to see you, but I won't go." Why you frowned? Between heaven and earth, yin and yang have their order. As a scholar, how can I disregard heavenly principles and the way? My dear friend, do you know that a gentleman can be forsaken by the world? Teng Zijing's eyes were profound. He smiled, Go back. I will go to the underworld for reincarnation. You live well. We will meet again in the next life. You fell silent, even though you were unwilling, but you knew very well that his nature, though seemingly gentle, would never change regarding what he believed to be right. Just as he said, "Where my heart leads, I will never regret. Even unto death. Say goodbye then." Teng Zijing slowly squatted down. He wrapped his arms around the big white dog's neck, then pressed his cheek against the brown fur on its nape. His eyes held a myriad of reluctance. Then he closed his eyes and took a deep breath, as if to remember this scent, to console him for the thousands of years to come. After a long while, he released you and stood up, walking step by step towards the gate of the underworld. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. At this moment, all the souls were watching this young scholar. Wherever he passed, all the souls made way for him, and as he walked forward, yin energy surged around him. Gradually, a simple green long gown appeared on him. His hair was no longer disheveled. Instead, it automatically became neat, and he donned a scholar's cap. Finally, he possessed the refined demeanor of a scholar. You stood rooted, watching him walk further and further away. Finally, that refined and handsome scholar stopped in front of the gate of the underworld. He turned, cupped his hands in greeting and bowed towards you. Smiling, he bowed deeply and said, "Take care." Then he turned and stepped into the gate of the underworld. You watched this scene intently. It was a long while before you recovered your senses. A complex smile appeared in his eyes. "Take care." You left Teju with complex emotions. Yinzi thought he could finally be successfully reincarnated. But what you didn't know was, when Teng Zijing stepped into that eternal, dark underworld world, what awaited him was an even crueler judgment for harboring a murderer, attempting to deceive heaven and cross the sea, and secretly aiding. You shall be cast into Jing hell. Do you admit it? The judge's cold voice echoed in the abyss. Teng Zijing did not hesitate in the slightest. That scholar, whose conduct was upright his entire life, who had never committed evil, for you, he willingly was cast into the endlessly painful Jing hell. Time flew by, and 6 years had swiftly passed in the human world. The Dongbao dynasty was established, and peace returned to the land. In this era of peace and prosperity, the descendants of the Teng family gradually rose to prominence. Peng Yuxiu's son, Zhang Hui's, not only inherited Zhang Yanghu's noble title, but also displayed extraordinary talent. However, under his mother's advice, he kept in mind your prophecy of Purple Star, shining brightly from back then. Using the facade of a stubborn young master, he carefully concealed his brilliance. And Teng Kinking, that little girl who cried while hugging your leg back then, has now grown into a woman in red. Heroic and valiant extraordinary woman. Her actions were unforgettable deeds, daring to mock men for not being kings. This arrogant poem startled the world. It alarmed Emperor Dongbao, but she gambled on the emperor's magnanimity and won. Not only was she spared from death, but her name as a talented woman spread throughout the land. After 16 years of arduous study, she was finally going to fulfill the promise she made to you. By the spring river back then, in her 24th year, she challenged Dongyan Snow Palace, the foremost academy of the Dongbao dynasty, initiating a world-shaking Dao-seeking challenge. She intended to overpower all the talented individuals in the land by herself and firmly secure the title of the world's most talented woman. Yet, on the eve of the challenge, she, disguised as a man, encountered a white-haired old man on the street. The old man mercilessly ridiculed her grand feat, saying, "A half-filled pot makes the most noise. You're merely fishing for fame. So young, yet instead of diligently pursuing knowledge, you wholeheartedly chase after empty fame. The world's most talented woman is nothing more than this." These words struck her awake like a heavy hammer blow. She stood rooted to the spot for a long time. Finally, she took a deep breath and had her maid retrieve the challenge letter. She looked towards the distant horizon and whispered, "Grandpa Bai, only this kind of me is worthy of your pride." Right, from then on, the world had one less talented woman vying for empty fame, but one more female scholar dedicated to profound learning. Another 4 years passed. You, living in seclusion in the ancient dwelling on Cloud Mist Mountain, were already 90 years old. You now possessed a terrifying 9,000 years of cultivation. On this day, a fine drizzle fell in the mountains. You slowly opened your eyes and said to Lady Hong, the female ghost serving beside you, "A guest has arrived. Open the door and welcome them." The main door creaked, slowly pushing open. A middle-aged man in green robes, holding an oil paper umbrella, stood in the rain. "Princess Dnyn, I trust you've been well." Lady Hong instantly trembled all over with excitement. "Master, my master, you once said that when the time was right, you would come find me. Your appearance today, could it be?" The man in green robes smiled and nodded. "Yes, I calculated the heavenly secrets. His sentence in the underworld is complete. He has already reincarnated. Where is he? You'll go find him now." Lady Hong had completely lost her usual calm. She had waited bitterly for 3,000 years and was now excited and frantic, like a moth drawn to a flame. But the man in green robes remained silent. Lady Hong's heart instantly sank, her eyes full of worry. She asked, "Master, what's wrong? Did something unexpected happen?" The man in green robes looked at the drizzly sky, a hint of weariness in his expression. "Rain washes away filial piety. It seems it's still raining. You know, shouldn't you invite me in first?" "Master, please come in." Please come in, Lady Hong exclaimed. The dignified female ghost, with 3,000 years of cultivation, was now blushing furiously with shame. Inside the ancient dwelling on Cloud Mist Mountain, you and that man, in green robes who came with an umbrella, sat facing each other. He was Lady Hong's master, 3,000 years ago, Venerable Kinglu, peerless great demon, who assisted his iron-blooded human disciple in conquering the land. Venerable Kinglu, to allow his disciple and beloved wife, after their sentences were complete, to rekindle their past, he defied heaven and altered destiny. He transformed Lady Hong into a ghost, and in this extremely yin cloud mist mountain, he set up a formation to conceal heavenly secrets. He had waited bitterly for a full 3,000 years. 1 year in the mortal world is 10 years in the underworld. This 3,000 years of waiting was equivalent to his disciples' 30,000 years of suffering in the netherworld. You had heard that Venerable Kinglu understood the calculations of heaven and earth. Holding a glimmer of hope, you handed him Teng Zijing's name, ancestral home, and birth characters. You asked him to calculate the whereabouts of that old friend, whom you hadn't sensed for 10 years, and whose aura of reincarnation you hadn't detected. Venerable Kinglu gazed at the heavens, his glabella seemingly evolving with the stars of the cosmos. But after a long while, he slowly opened his eyes, and with a grave and sympathetic expression, uttered 2 words. Hell, the only place under heaven he couldn't calculate, was the underworld, the final destination of myriad mortal souls. At that moment, a sharp, fierce light shot from your eyes. The terrifying demonic power within you completely lost control. With a bang, it erupted. Your massive claw fiercely pressed onto the ground. The scorching heat instantly melted the hard stone slabs into smoking mortar. Venerable Kinglu frowned in confusion. Given Teng Zijing's destiny, he fundamentally had no ability to violate heavenly laws. How could he have fallen to such a state? You bit down hard on your fangs, your voice trembling, your heart aching as if cut by a knife. He's suffering punishment for me, isn't he? You finally realized with a jolt. 10 years ago, in Teju Hades, that stubborn old man, why he refused to go with you even to death. What? An esoteric master with unfathomable cultivation. All those talks about a gentleman can be deceived with proper methods. They were all just excuses to deceive you. Deep in his bones, he harbored the obsession of a scholar becoming an official. He knew that your capital crime of wreaking havoc in the underworld could not be escaped. When the heavenly laws came down, someone would have to bear the brunt. So, without hesitation, he bore for you that monstrous heavenly punishment. Your eyes red, you resolved to go to the underworld and rescue him, even if it meant exchanging yourself. A mortal's soul was too weak. You feared he couldn't endure the endless torment of hell. But Venerable Kinglu mercilessly shattered your fantasy. There isn't a shred of a chance. The underworld has yin gods with tens of thousands of years of cultivation presiding over it. Great demons like us, though capable in the mortal world, can't make any waves at all in the underworld. If you go, you'll merely be throwing yourself into a net. Not only won't you save him, but you'll sacrifice yourself for nothing. A feeling of powerlessness engulfed you like a tide. You refused to accept it. You possessed 100-fold cultivation speed. If only a few hundred more years passed, you might indeed be able to shake the underworld. But could you afford to wait? Could he? Waiting a few hundred more years meant he would suffer thousands more years of torture in hell. As if seeing through your despair, Venerable Kinglu smiled mysteriously. And for you, pointed out another path. There's also a world-shaking fortune in this world that can greatly increase one's cultivation within a short period. Although this shortcut is ethereal, it is often encountered by chance and cannot be sought. But as long as you seize it, a frantic, eager flame instantly ignited in your eyes. For example, even if the path ahead is a mountain of blades and a sea of fire, for that upright old man who went to hell for you, you must poke a hole through these vast heavens. Venerable Kinglu, with an ethereal gaze, told you that world-shaking fortunes were hidden within the mortal world. For example, flowers blooming amidst the clouds, ruined palaces floating in the sky, or suddenly reversing waterfalls, mortals dancing in the sunset. As long as you can encounter any one of these wonders, you will instantly gain 10,000 years of cultivation, directly entering the ranks of great demon kings. You fiercely swallowed a mouthful of saliva, your heart completely stirred. Although you possessed 100-fold cultivation speed, the time difference between the underworld and the mortal world was a full 10-fold. If you went a few hundred years later, Teng Zijing would have to endure thousands more years of endless torment in those 18 layers of hell. What kind of pain was that? Exactly, it was simply unimaginable. For that good brother who suffered for you, who had originally calmly awaited peaceful times, felt an incomparably urgent desire for strength for the first time. I must become strong as soon as possible. But these wondrous sights were ethereal and elusive. Everything depended entirely on fate. Venerable Kinglu then changed the subject, telling you a world-shaking secret. Within the borders of Wuxia Kingdom, a legendary immortal artifact will appear in the coming years. As long as it's related to immortals, it will certainly shake heaven and earth. If you can seize this immortal artifact, you might indeed be able to shake the underworld and rescue your old friend, even if that place is extremely dangerous, and even 10,000-year great demons might perish. At this moment, Lady Hong, who was beside them, finally couldn't hold back. Blushing, she pressed, "Where exactly is my husband?" whom I have bitterly awaited for 3,000 years. Venerable King Lu put away his jesting, his expression serious. In this life, he was born in the Jingtian Buddha kingdom, the ancestral land of Buddhism. Not only is he a monk, but he is also the Tathagata. He is the fated one of the heavenly book. Lady Hong's expression changed drastically. He was almost on the verge of tears from anxiety. He was now in a ghostly form. Going to the Buddhist sect's old den to snatch someone was no different from a dead end. But Reverend King Luo merely sneered. Full of confidence, he was now following the old monk all the way east, heading towards the Taoist sect's main stronghold to participate in the Tao Buddhist Dharma assembly in the Great Xia dynasty. The Taoist and Buddhist sects were already secretly competing. We are on Taoist territory, snatching a fated person for the Buddhist sect's heavenly scripture. The Taoist sect would be too happy to object. They might even secretly assist us. Lady Hong burst into laughter through her tears. Joyfully, he began massaging her master's shoulders. You watched this heartwarming scene before you and couldn't help but smile. Unconsciously, you thought of Tang Zijing again. Back then, he also sat in a chair like this, enjoying a shoulder massage from his son. Tang Jiangchen, the silly pig, he smiled and said to his son, Jiangchen, I had someone read our fortune. You probably won't achieve much in this life, but you're good at shoulder massages. When you grow up, you might even find a good wife. Go massage your Uncle Bai too. Little Jiangchen obediently walked behind you, but suddenly exclaimed, Oh, Dad, Uncle Bai, he doesn't have shoulders. Old man, that family you protected, they have all grown up now. You must wait for me in hell, even if I have to make enemies of all the gods and Buddhas in the heavens. I will definitely come and bring you home. The Great Xia dynasty, by a small stream outside a small mountain village, a young monk in a loose gray robe, carrying a bowl of frog porridge, happily ran to the shade of a tree and handed it to the old monk who was meditating. The young monk drank the leftover porridge from his master. A pure smile blossomed on his face, like fiery ripples shimmering on the stream under the sunlight. Under the old locust tree in the distance, the red-clad female ghost quietly watched this scene. In her dazed eyes, a gentle smile appeared. Her husband, whom she had bitterly waited for 3,000 years, that once decisive and iron-blooded human disciple, was in this life just a carefree young monk. Reverend Xinluo whispered, I'll go distract the old monk. You go and reveal yourself to him. Lady Hong, however, slowly withdrew her smile. With a complex look in her eyes, she shook her head. No need. He is living very happily in this life. I've never seen him show such a pure and natural smile. Let's not disturb him. She turned away forlornly and disappeared into the distance. Reverend King Luo sighed. Perhaps we can only wait until he cultivates the Tathagata heavenly scripture and achieves great fortune, becoming an immortal Buddha, recalling his past life, then let him choose for himself. Meanwhile, in the west, the old monk glanced meaningfully at the old locust tree. Profound and enigmatic smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Karma arises and ceases. There is a predetermined destiny. Our gaze returns to Wuxia nation. You listened to Reverend King Luo's words and waited bitterly for a full 10 years in this tiny nation. Your immortal wife never appeared, but you dared not leave even half a step, because besides you, countless great demons and human cultivators were also strictly abiding in this mixed and chaotic place. During these 10 years, although you lived in seclusion, you often heard news from Dongbao nation, which was the beautiful land left behind by Tang Zijing. Tang Kinking, after canceling her inquiry at the academy, devoted herself to diligent study. She was now undoubtedly the most talented woman in the world. Her fame spread far and wide. As for Tang Jiangchen, that absurd old man, even in his 60s, he still took several concubines who knew he was afraid that Tang Kinking would never marry and that the family line would end, and used his own way to fulfill his filial duty. What made you most gratified was Tang Yuxiu's son, Zhang Hui's. 5 years ago, a new emperor ascended the throne in daunting nation and challenged Dongbao nation. In that critical moment, that young Marquis Wang Ku, who had hidden his talents for many years, also stepped forward. He displayed exceptionally high martial prowess and military talent. In just over a year, he became the commander of a legion in Dongbao nation, turning the tide and completely defeated the enemy forces. Daunting nation withdrew its troops, promising not to invade for 100 years. Zhang Hui's became a national hero. Some even secretly urged him to rebel and claim the throne. But he did not forget your prophecy of purple star shining brightly from back then, nor did he forget what his maternal grandfather, Peng Zijin, had said. The common people suffer greatly. The common people suffer under kings, changing dynasties for personal gain. Ultimately, it is the common people who suffer. He wisely retreated from the limelight, voluntarily handing over military power. The great emperor of Dongbao, in his gratification, conferred upon him the title of first-rank Duke of Loyalty and Righteousness, and vowed to protect him to the death. Not only did he turn the entire Chunjiang prefecture into his fief, but also specially commissioned a biography for him. Biography of the Duke of Loyalty and Righteousness. This was the emperor's overt scheme, and the best unspoken understanding between monarch and subject. This obedient child, who listened to his maternal grandfather, now had wealth and virtue. His name would flow through eternity, living a life even more carefree than the emperor in the deep palace. But on this very day, above the small town where you lived in seclusion, a dull rumble of thunder suddenly echoed. A few small black clouds, majestic and awe-inspiring, formally gathered above your head. You raised your head and looked at the thunderclouds in the sky, and couldn't help but smile. A full 100 years had passed. You, as a peerless great demon with 10,000 years of terrifying cultivation, finally welcomed your first 100-year heavenly tribulation. Fierce winds raged, blowing away the clothes women had hung out to dry. A pair of trousers slapped onto a young man's face. He pulled off the trousers and exclaimed, "Which fellow Taoist is undergoing tribulation here?" but was pulled away by someone nearby. "What fellow Taoist? That's a demon." In midair, streaks of scorching lightning struck down one after another. And you, this peerless great demon, with 10,000 years of terrifying cultivation, was lazily sprawled on the spot. You closed your eyes, enjoying this rare lightning massage. Harder, a little harder. This young lady is a bit rusty. Is this your first time doing this? Letting the lightning wash over you, without even breaking a single one of your dog hairs. That heavenly tribulation seemed to be enraged. It used all its might to strike down frantically, yet it was still utterly useless. Finally, it yielded to your absolute power as a great demon king, and could only transform into a resentful drizzle, reluctantly dispersing. With the passing of this first 100-year heavenly tribulation, you finally refined the hengu within your body, no longer needed to rely on spiritual sense transmission. You could now truly speak human words. "Master, are you thirsty? Quickly, have some tea to moisten your throat." That 1,000-year-old great demon you had subdued, the black bear, Jinxing Wanli, over 2 meters tall, came over, holding tea. With a fawning expression, you opened your mouth. The tea transformed into a stream of water and flew into your mouth. "Xing your tea-making skills have improved. Finally, it doesn't smell like urine anymore. It seems you've washed your hands this time." This simpleton coughed twice and scratched his head. "The tea was brewed by my sworn sister 100 years ago. I saved a green fish spirit who was being hunted. Seeing that she was too ugly, I felt pity and took her in as my sister." You raised an eyebrow. "Very ugly." You looked at his burly, robust appearance, and asked him what he thought of his own looks. Xing Wanli puffed out his chest and said, "Naturally, I am extraordinarily handsome. Rare in this world." You nodded thoughtfully, given this simpleton's peculiar aesthetic. If he said someone was ugly, she was most likely a peerless beauty. Of course, you didn't ask further. It wouldn't do to inquire further just because someone has a decent-looking sister, and insist on asking about her or calling her over. "Right, hello. So you're here. I've finally found you." Just then, an old man holding an iron-mouthed divine diviner banner and a tattered flag burst in, covered in dust, with a black eye from being beaten, but circled around you, exclaiming in admiration, "Young man, I see you have extraordinary bones and the appearance of a peerless demon immortal. Why don't you take me as your master? I'll teach you the Hunyun Palace art." Cultivated the nirvana golden body, imperishable through countless eons. You only took one glance and saw through his true form as a 6,900-year-old great demon. In the eyes of others, this would be considered a powerful expert, but before you, a 10,000-year-old great demon, he was nothing. You lightly shook your head, signaling Xing Wanli to see the guest out. Xing Wanli impatiently picked him up and violently threw him out of the courtyard, shouting, "Scram! Scram! Scram! What imperishable through countless eons. My grandpa can even withstand heavenly tribulations." You looked at his back, squinting your eyes. Opportunities in this world are hard to predict. What if he really is a hidden mighty figure? To verify, your eyes flickered, and you employed a small trick. "Ouch. Who threw this banana peel? Don't let me catch you." From outside the courtyard, the old man's exasperated scream immediately rang out. You inexplicably let out a sigh of relief. He didn't dodge. It seems he's truly not some master. It's like missing out on a blind box someone else took, and personally confirming there was nothing good inside. Only then can you sleep soundly. The years passed peacefully. Another 10 years flew by. During these 10 years, you spent every day frantically mining in your mental world. The tunnel leading to the human race's core of destiny had already been dug over 100 meters deep by you. The iron blood malevolent energy flowing from the paper, money's crevices, was now as thick as a pinky finger. When this power was released, it could easily suppress a 500-year-old minor demon. This meant that, in addition to your heaven-reaching demonic power, you had cultivated another set of killer techniques that could restrain all methods. Even if your demonic power were to be depleted one day, you would still have a trump card. You even looked forward to the day you could dig to the source of the iron blood malevolent energy, possessing inexhaustible power. However, on this very day, above a desolate mountain in Wuxia Kingdom, large swaths of fiery clouds suddenly appeared, filling the sky as if heavenly fire had descended. An invisible, terrifying fluctuation instantly spread. The entire Wuxia Kingdom, and even the surrounding regions, trembled violently under this heaven-shaking pressure. You suddenly opened your heavenly eye, gazing towards the distant horizon. You saw that within the fiery clouds filling the sky, a phantom world was actually rising and falling, and deep within that world, quietly floated a blood-red longsword, emanating endless, killing intent. An immortal artifact has appeared. You had waited bitterly for decades, and a light of excitement instantly burst forth in your eyes. Your entire body glowed brightly. You took a step, and the moment your figure vanished, your ethereal voice drifted from the void, echoing in the courtyard. Wuxia Kingdom is about to be turned upside down. Hurry and hide. Don't run around for that old man who is still suffering in the 18 layers of hell. That clean old man, that peerless immortal artifact that can shake the underworld. You were determined to obtain it. Above the desolate mountain in Wuxia Kingdom, the fiery clouds filling the sky spun violently. Deep within the clouds, a phantom world rose and fell. The legendary blood-red immortal sword had finally appeared. For hundreds of miles around, countless demons, monsters, and ghosts with glowing green eyes rode rolling black clouds, converging overwhelmingly. A bunch of demonic creatures also dare to covet the immortal artifact. A cold snort echoed through the 9 heavens. A dazzling meteor brazenly streaked across the sky, directly splitting the boundless black demonic clouds in two, like a raging ocean being torn apart. The newcomer was a cold man wearing a yin-yang Taoist robe. He stood with his hands behind his back, defying all under heaven. He actually looked down on all the demons with his power alone. Mere beasts, I give you 3 breaths of time. Get out of my sight, or die along with the cold declaration. 2 giant yin-yang fish rose from his body. A terrifying aura surged forth, like a giant overlooking heaven and earth. 10,000 years of cultivation. He was a fated one for the human race's heavenly tome. The great demon has arrived. Countless minor demons were terrified to their core, fleeing frantically, but in the sky, over a dozen massive black clouds still remained. These included a heaven-eclipsing rock, a colossal black fish from Xianxia, a giant winged serpent, a 5-colored divine moth, and a 9-headed berserk corpse. These dozen-plus peerless great demons, each with over 8,000 years of cultivation, who usually avoided each other, now stood shoulder to shoulder on the same battle line. They roared, "If you obtain the immortal artifact, will we, the demons of this world, still have room to breathe? Even if not for the immortal artifact today, we must carve a path of survival for our demon race descendants. Human cultivators have always been overbearing. Even benevolent demons who have committed no evil often cannot escape death. You court death." The Taoist-robed man finished speaking and raised both hands high. A heaven-shrouding, earth-covering, Taiji diagram instantly sealed the entire sky. Heaven's punishment, rumble. Countless terrifying thunder dragons roared and struck down from the Taiji diagram, even though these dozen-plus peerless great demons displayed their various divine abilities and resisted with all their might. They were still absolutely crushed by the 10,000-year cultivate, their flesh and blood splattering everywhere on the spot, bone fragments flying. They were pierced by the lightning, riddled with holes, and tightly sealed within the space, plunging into endless despair. I am not reconciled, as our demon race truly have no mighty figures, and can only be bullied by others. The great demons let out desperate roars. The Taoist-robed man sneered contemptuously. Even if there were mighty figures among the demon race, would they dare show themselves before him, the inheritor of the 10,000-year heavenly tome? But the next second, the entire world seemed to have been paused. The raging thunder filling the sky suddenly halted. The Taoist-robed man abruptly looked up, horrified to discover that the heaven-shrouding yin-yang Taiji diagram had actually, as if having undergone 10,000 years of erosion, instantly dimmed and disintegrated, turning into dust and vanishing in the desperate gazes of all the great demons. You, a majestic and slender, great white dog, untainted by a speck of dust, shattered the void and descended upon the firmament. Your entire body emitted a brilliant divine radiance, like a bright moon hanging high in the sky. In an instant, the terrifying pressure within you, indescribable in words, like a bursting dam in the ocean, suddenly filled the entire heaven and earth. Hello? It's a mighty figure of our demon race, the dozen-plus dying, peerless great demons, seeing your supreme divine might descend like a bright moon, were so excited that tears welled up in their eyes. They all knelt down in worship. They had long been suppressed by human mighty figures, now finally experienced the ecstasy of having backing. Senior, suppress this person. Uphold the prestige of our demon race. The great demons roared excitedly behind you. However, you merely glanced at them coldly and lightly uttered a single word. Scram. The dozen-plus peerless great demons choked on their words on the spot and fled in a panic. Scrambling away, you merely saved them as an afterthought. You never considered yourself a senior of the demon race. You were unique, killing humans and killing demons, executing immortals and destroying Buddhas. Your actions were guided only by the scales in your heart. At this moment, the arrogance on the Taoist-robed man's face had long since turned into an indescribable gloom and sullenness. He stared fixedly at you and sternly rebuked. What demonic creature dares to be presumptuous before this venerable one? I'll give you 3 breaths of time to disappear. Otherwise, your 10,000 years of cultivation will be lost in a single morning. Your eyes were unperturbed. Move aside. Don't block the way. You stepped through the void, walking towards him step by step. With each step you took, white ripples spread across the sky, instantly transforming into surging waves that swept in all directions. Heaven and earth changed color, and the underworld trembled. The Taoist-robed man was utterly enraged. Malevolent energy surged between his brows. He suddenly raised both hands and roared, "Move mountains and fill seas. Rumble." 2,000 Jiang mountains in the distance were actually forcibly pulled from the ground by him and came crashing down on you, covering the sky and moon. Petty tricks. You then stomped heavily on the void. Your body instantly swelled dramatically, and a shocking surge erupted. You transformed into a prehistoric behemoth, towering between heaven and earth. Your head directly smashed those 2,000 Jiang mountains. In a flash, the divine light in the palm of your mountain moon-like giant claw shone brilliantly, as if raising a bright moon and slamming it down fiercely towards him. The Taoist-robed man's expression changed drastically. He frantically used his spatial shifting ability to retreat several thousand meters. Yet he was still struck by the terrifying ripple from your claw. His blood flew out for hundreds of meters before he reappeared. As he stabilized, his eyes were filled with defiance and madness. He roared, unleashing a deadly strike, yin-yang cleaving heaven. Above the 9 heavens, black and a white stream of yin-yang energy plummeted down with a roar, converging into a colossal yin-yang greatsword. 10,000 Jiang long, bearing a peerless sharpness capable of severing yin and yang. Dividing dusk from dawn, aimed at you, it slashed down from the sky, facing this world-destroying strike. You suddenly looked up. Your eyes burst forth with radiant light, instantaneous splendor, time like a blade, where the radiant light swept past. Everything between heaven and earth instantly faded into black and white. That arrogant yin-yang greatsword seemed to instantly experience the erosion of 10,000 years. Covered in mottled cracks, was smashed to smithereens by your single claw, turning into dust scattered across the sky. Not only that, you took a single step, traversing vast distances in an instant, instantly appearing before him. Your giant claw once again descended upon his head. Met by a defensive shield of light, he frantically unleashed his yin-yang gourd, desperately defending, yet he was shaken by you. Violently spewing blood, he completely fell into a frenzy. With hands forming a seal, the grand void fire dragon emerged. Ferocious fire dragon roared out from the gourd, growing rapidly against the wind, becoming as massive as you. The terrifying high temperature made the earth turn crimson and crack. The firelight dyed the sky crimson for 100 li. A hint of disdain flashed in your eyes. You directly opened your abyssal maw, capable of devouring mountains and rivers. The sky demon's maw swallowed that arrogant fire dragon. It was actually swallowed whole by you in one gulp. Fire spewed from your 7 orifices, turning into a massive heaven and earth cauldron. You snorted coldly. Inside my belly, yet you still wish to stir up trouble. I will refine you. Amidst the Taoist-robed man's shrill, desperate screams, you not only completely refined his life-bound fire dragon, but also ushered in your current life's transformation and evolution. Your physique became more symmetrical and slender, filled with explosive power. Snow-white, flowing mane grew on your neck. Your tail transformed into strands of floating light. At this moment, you were magnificent, powerful, and ethereal. You refined my fire dragon and actually evolved. The Taoist-robed man's eyes were bloodshot. He was so enraged that he spewed blood again. He knew he was no match. He left with a resentful "just you wait." His whole body glowed brightly, and he fled in disarray. You slammed your palm into empty air, creating a crater in the earth hundreds of meters wide. A terrifying, bottomless, giant pit. Finally, no one was disturbing you. You retracted your colossal Dharma idol and looked up at the blood-red immortal sword in that illusory world. For Teng Zijing to go to hell and knock open that door of the dead, you transformed into a streak of white light and plunged unhesitatingly into that unknown secret realm. You passed through the barrier of the illusory world. What greeted you was enough to make even gods and Buddhas despair. Utter death. Beneath your feet was a rolling, surging sea of mortal flames that specifically eroded all vital energy and magic power. Above your head was surging, roaring iron blood malevolent energy, corroding all souls. A pincer attack from both sides, a dual trial of ice and fire. If you tried to cross by force, even you, a 10,000-year great demon with profound Dao cultivation, would be completely dissolved within 2 hours, leaving no trace of your bones. Retreat. How could I then save Teng Zijing to escape the trap of the 18 layers of hell? The exit was on the other side of the sea. Unwilling to give up, at the brink of life and death, an idea flashed in your mind. You summoned from your mind those orange-yellow fragments dug out from them, crushing and compressing them like a thick layer of mud film, sealing your entire body tightly. You sealed your eyes, stopped your breathing, enduring intense pain like being grilled on a hot plate. In this forbidden zone for deities, you flew as if carrying a mountain. You stubbornly endured for half. When you, utterly exhausted, flew to the end, before your eyes was an isolated island being swallowed by endless void, and that legendary blood-red immortal sword was suspended in the center of the island. Seeing you, it burst out with a joyous sword cry. Finally, someone has come. Quickly, take me away from this collapsing hellhole. You cautiously made it recognize you as its master. It unhesitatingly spat out a streak of blood-red light, which merged into your body. The bond of blood connection felt incredibly real. It eagerly inquired about the secret method for crossing the sea of suffering. One must be wary of others. Such an extraordinary secret must never be revealed. You coldly refused, taking it into your danshan, and turned to leave. Behind you, the vast void swallowed one ruined immortal island after another. Even towering Dharma idols and ancient gods and Buddhas in that collapsing void let out earth-shattering, desperate screams, turning into dust and smoke. You dared not look back and struggled for another full half-year, finally breaking through that barrier and returning to the mortal world. Cool air rushed towards you. You gasped for breath, frantically devouring the spiritual energy within a radius of several hundred li. That heaven-devouring, terrifying phenomenon transformed into a massive vortex, scaring away the surrounding great demons and cultivators who fled in panic. But just when you thought you could finally go and retrieve Teng Zijing to come home, a red light suddenly tore out from within your body. That blood-red immortal sword grew rapidly against the wind, reaching to the heavens and piercing the earth. Blood-red lightning instantly tore apart the sky's winds and clouds. Said Ahoha, I'm finally out, now that there are no immortals or Buddhas in this world. Who else can contend with me? That unrestrained mad laughter resounded through heaven and earth, carrying a terrifying ambition to rule the world. You instantly plunged into an ice cavern. You finally understood. If an immortal artifact was already powerful enough to be invincible in the world, why would it be your servant? That so-called blood recognition of master was a trick it played on you from the very beginning, a deception to make you carry it across the sea. You didn't hesitate for a moment, decisively activating your divine ability. A foot's distance, yet the ends of the earth, escaping into the spatial rift, barely escaping with your life. Havaha, my master, where are you going? Its playful sneer came from the void. A streak of blood-red sword light followed the spatial fluctuations, rudely splitting open the barrier. You fell out of the void passage in disarray. Your tail tip was split open. A huge wound gushed with blood, completely staining your magnificent snow-white fur, completely red. You stared at it coldly, your heart filled with helplessness. The blood-red immortal sword, amidst a red glow, transformed into a defiant, arrogant man in a blood-red robe. A blood-red sword mark was imprinted on his brow. His gaze was arrogant and disdainful. His entire body exuded an aura that seemed capable of tearing apart heaven and earth. He looked at your heavily wounded self and smiled cruelly. I didn't want this either. If you were unremarkable, I might have let you live. But on your body, there's actually an astonishing secret that allows one to cross those two seas. This secret is so great, even I am tempted, facing this peerlessly malicious act of repaying kindness with enmity. You gritted your teeth. For the old man to survive, this battle was inevitable. So, you really don't plan to let me go today? You asked in a deep voice. The wound on your tail tip was infested with terrifying immortal sword energy, gushing with blood and utterly unable to heal. The immortal sword, now the blood-robed man, sneered, since I've offended you, then I must cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. I'll give you a chance. Choose a more comfortable way to die for yourself. Your heart was ice cold. Even if death comes, you will never die a pathetic death. You are an 11,000-year-old great demon. You must die in battle. You let out an earth-shattering roar. Your body instantly swelled, towering between heaven and earth. That giant claw, like a mountain and the moon, carried a full moon. He only extended one finger. With a loud boom, the full moon exploded in midair. Your colossal body was sent flying like a meteor. Blood poured from your wounds, falling like a waterfall. A moment between life and death. Fluorescent light burst from your eyes. The power of prime years swept forth. Heaven and earth lost their color. Taking advantage of the instant, he was brushed by the light of time. You used all your strength to unleash the near-at-hand, yet worlds away technique, vanishing into the gray spatial rift, dragging your body, which was almost disemboweled, fleeing desperately through the void, using your demonic power to desperately seal your wounds. But just at this moment, bloody lightning flashed above the void. The phantom of the man in blood-red clothes, twisted and stretched like a malevolent ghost, enveloping you completely. Before absolute power, your struggles were futile. That twisted giant hand reached out, covering the sky and earth. You closed your eyes. Endless despair rose in your heart. It's over. Just at this critical moment, from the deepest part of the spatial rift, a vast, gray hand suddenly reached out, like swatting a fly. Without any hindrance, it fiercely slapped that arrogant immortal sword, repaying kindness with enmity. And still relentless. Do you really think no one in this world can deal with you? A cold snort echoed through the void. That blood-colored immortal sword, capable of cleaving heaven and earth, was actually directly banished by this invisible force, its whereabouts unknown. You stared in horror at the retreating mist. The enraged large hand took a deep breath. There truly are masters in this world. At this moment, extreme weakness spread throughout your body. You could no longer maintain your divine abilities. You were like an extraterrestrial cloud iron, smashed fiercely into a mortal market, creating a deep crater, stirring up billowing dust and smoke. Pedestrians on the street were scared witless and fled in panic. But in this chaotic corner, you discovered a dirty little girl. She stared at you with wide, curious eyes. She actually didn't run. You endured the intense pain, walked over, and asked her why she wasn't scared. She naively pointed to her twisted, deformed legs. Because I can't run. These uncles broke them. They said doing this would get a lot of money, and then we'd have food to eat. You looked at her eerily broken legs. A chilling glint flashed in your eyes. Indeed, such vicious scum still existed in the mortal realm. You looked at the little girl with complex emotions, pondered for a moment and said, "Follow me from now on. You'll have food to eat." She tilted her head, asking with both anticipation and frankness, "Will there be vegetables? Will there be meat?" All good, I'll go with you. Her legs were broken by those people, yet her bowl only contained a few leftover vegetable leaves. Now you said there would be meat to eat. She was willing to risk everything. You sighed. You used your divine power to slowly levitate her broken body, placing her on your broad back, although you were severely injured and weak. As a 10,000-year-old great demon, carrying a little girl was as light as a feather. Big white dog. You can do magic. She cheered in surprise. You endured the pain and corrected her. From now on, you'll call me grandfather. Grandfather, the little girl obediently nodded, carrying her on your back, as if carrying the last shred of attachment in this world. In the afterglow of the setting sun, you limped slowly into the distance. You took the crippled little girl and settled down in a desolate small town in a foreign land. You occupied a luxurious mansion like a cuckoo taking over a nest. The owner of the mansion was originally a 1,000-year-old great demon who roamed the mortal world. You only used one sentence: "I'll help you block your second millennium tribulation 50 years from now," which made this great demon ecstatic on the spot. Kneeling and kowtowing, he willingly transformed into an old woman. Dai Zai, honoring ancestors, has served you for 50 years, but in the world of demons, to be able to follow an unfathomable senior and listen to their teachings was a fortune accumulated over 10 lifetimes. Time flew by. 20 years passed in a flash. During these 20 years, the sword Kai left behind contained extremely high-level immortal power, firmly entrenched deep within your internal organs. Every day, you used your mind to furiously scour it with the iron-blooded malevolent Kai from the mine cavern, but only your external injuries had recovered. Every moment, you had to draw out at least half of your power to firmly suppress the backlash of that immortal energy. But even in this weakened state, now possessing 13,000 years of cultivation, you were by no means weaker than any 10,000-year-old great demon in this world. Grandfather, Fujii Kinking, the female scholar from Dongbao Kingdom. Another new book has been passed over. That little beggar, covered in mud, from back then, had now grown into beautiful and lively young girl in green clothes, because she looked so much like Fujii Kinking in her youth. Over these 20 years, you had always raised her as your own granddaughter. Gao Yuling held up a book and excitedly ran to you and squatted down. Grandfather, this book is called The Legend of Bays. The protagonist in this book actually shares your name. You appeared to be sleeping in the courtyard, but were actually healing your injuries. Hearing this, you slowly opened your eyes. A gentle smile appeared in your deep eyes. "What is this book about?" you asked with a smile. The young girl animatedly recounted to you. It was about a spiritual beast named Bays, who, in its youth, accompanied Fujii Palace, relying on each other for survival. In Fujii Palace's later years, it angrily repelled evil spirits, traveled 10,000 li a day, endured 3 days of heavy rain, secretly ferried 1,000,000 lost souls, and even made the waters of Spring River dare not cross the Thunder Pool by half a step. Once this book was released, the world was shocked, causing countless scholars to yearn to have such a spiritual beast by their side. You looked at the slightly blushing girl with a half-smile, teased her. "Were you reading this with that blacksmith boy by the river?" Reading the book together, Gao Yuling shyly lowered her head, her voice soft and gentle. "When a boy grows up, he should marry. When a girl grows up, she should marry. It's time for you to get married too," you said with a smile. Hearing your words, she instinctively let out a cheer, but then her eyes instantly reddened, her face filled with shame and grievance. "Grandfather, I can't bear to leave you back then." She was alone and helpless, her legs broken. It was you who gave her a home and let her live the life of a young lady. To abandon you, who raised her, for love, she couldn't bear to do it. You looked at this sensible little girl. You put away your teasing. Your gaze became incomparably benevolent. "I've carefully observed that boy. Although he's just a blacksmith and won't achieve anything great in the future, but he has a kind heart. He's someone you can entrust your life to. Have him bring a few catas of wine to drink with me until we're thoroughly drunk. Then this marriage will be settled." The young girl's face was full of pleasant surprise, but immediately after, a deep worry appeared. "But grandfather, if you drink with him, if he finds out about our family's situation." Gao Yuling already knew the truth, and clearly knew that the one who raised her, whom she regarded as her own grandfather, was actually a demon. If ordinary people knew the truth, they would surely be scared witless, and even report it to officials, or invite masters to subdue the demon. She feared that once the matter was exposed, he will not only lose love, but also lose his dearest you. You looked at the face full of sorrow of the cautious young girl. Mysterious smile suddenly appeared on your face. "Do you really think he knows nothing?" You casually told Zhu Yuling. That poor boy who toiled in the blacksmith shop had actually long seen through your demonic identity. You watched Zhu Yuling, her mouth agape in shock and horror, and a smile of one who has seen through the mortal world curled on your lips. You told her that the honest, simple young man, when he first learned that you were a great demon who had lived for 10,000 years, was so scared his legs turned to jelly, and he soiled himself. He even wanted to go to the Yemen that very night to report it, and sought to invite masters from famous mountains and rivers to subdue the demon. But after the fear subsided, the decision he ultimately made was to, in a pitch-black night, tightly clutching a rusty pig-slaughtering knife, climb over our tall courtyard wall. His hands and feet trembled. Cold sweat drenched his clothes, yet he still wanted to rescue his beloved girl from this demon's lair. That cowherd, born into poverty, had always used his clumsy, yet incredibly brave way to carry the burden forward for his beloved girl. He swallowed all his fears alone, just to maintain that sense of peaceful times. In front of the girl, after Zhu Yuling finished listening, she was already in tears. 3 days later, that upright young man, driving a dilapidated ox cart, adorned with red embroidered balls, came to propose marriage. He took out the money he had saved for years from blacksmithing and bought a jar of daughter's red wine worth 10 taels of silver. As he stepped into the courtyard, directly facing you, the majestic great white dog, and the 2 unfathomable great demons behind you. He was so scared his tongue tied, he couldn't even speak properly, yet he still fiercely protected that jar of wine, as if guarding all his dignity and love. On the day they got married, you, the great demon who had lived for tens of thousands of years, uncharacteristically drank to the point of being utterly drunk. Life is too long, having witnessed too many partings and reunions. Sometimes living too long inherently means bearing endless sorrow and vicissitudes. You had intended to drown your sorrows in wine, but unexpectedly, at this lively open-air wedding banquet, you smelled the foulest evil intent. The human traffickers who had broken Zhu Yuling's legs back then, forcing her to beg on the streets. Those scoundrels were actually mingling in the crowd. Eating and drinking, they not only recognized their former cash cow, the new bride, but even after eating and drinking greedily set their eyes on you, who was sleeping under the willow tree. If this dog is sold, it will definitely fetch a sky-high price. They covered their faces with masks and, holding sacks, tiptoed towards you. They trembled all over with excitement, but these frogs at the bottom of a well had no idea what terrifying existence they were attempting to lay hands on. You didn't even lift an eyelid, nor did you change your breathing frequency. The journey of disaster and evil, unique to demons, transformed into wisps of black doom, silently coiling around them. The next moment, these utterly vile scoundrels, like stones tightly entangled by invisible water weeds, were directly dragged into the nearby light green spring river. There was no struggle, no splash, not even a ripple. They floated silently at the bottom of the cold riverbed, despairingly drowning. The wedding banquet on the shore was still filled with laughter and joy. No one knew that a few beasts had just gone to hell on this joyous day. 2 years later, on a night of thunder and rain, Niu Bu and Zhu Yuling's child was born. The child's soft cries actually suppressed the rolling thunder above the sky, and right beneath the eaves where you stood, from a crack in the courtyard ground, a tender sprout miraculously emerged. It grew wildly at a visible speed, in the blink of an eye, covering the clothesline, and bloomed a flower emitting sacred golden light. On the leaves of the vine, faint golden tadpole-like Dao patterns swam and flickered. You watched this scene, your eyes profound. That is the great Dao of the heavenly book, born with a faded person. This boy, named Nushi, nicknamed Little Persimmon, was destined to be born for this grand Dao. Time flew by, 10 years in a flash. 10-year-old Little Persimmon displayed a divine destiny far beyond that of mortals. At the bottom of the spring river, where the human traffickers had drowned, water ghosts were causing mischief, attempting to drag Little Persimmon into the water as a scapegoat. Little Persimmon stood by the riverbank, where willows swayed gently, with the most innocent and brilliant smile of a child on his face. "Uncles," my mother said, "she will forever be grateful for your great kindness back then. So she asked me to give you a few gifts." He pulled out a few leaves from his bosom, from the heavenly book, gourd vine in front of the door, and gently threw them onto the river surface. "Damn your 8 generations of ancestors. May you die a terrible death." Midst the despairing and shrill curses of the water ghost, the golden leaves instantly dyed the water upon contact, and the entire river instantly erupted into towering golden flames, illuminating half the sky. Where the light of the great Tao shines, evil cannot exist. The demons that those human traffickers had become were utterly annihilated in extreme agony. Turning to dust, even their right to reincarnation was stripped away. Little Persimmon threw himself into his mother's arms, his eyes clear and resolute. "Mother, they are not human. They are beasts. I am not a cold-blooded and heartless person. I have a sense of good and evil in my heart. I can distinguish between good people and bad people." That once taciturn blacksmith, Niu Bu, stood by, clutching his pig-slaughtering knife, looking at his wife and child, and revealed a smile as steady as a mountain. The backbone of ordinary people can still stand firm between heaven and earth. However, the mortal world's years are always accompanied by blood and fire. Just as you had predicted back then, the Moonwheel dynasty's fate had reached its end. Above the 5 imperial treasuries, twin fish swam at the peak. Yin and Yang clashed, and the calamity of war erupted with a roar. Armies rose from all directions. Warlords fought amongst themselves, resulting in a full 10 years of turmoil. Mountains and rivers were shattered. Corpses lay strewn across the fields. 9 out of 10 households were empty. Where the flames of war passed, not a blade of grass grew. As civilization collapsed, the fire of the mortal world within the Moonwheel Kingdom's borders weakened unprecedentedly. Thus, demonic chaos descended. Countless demons and evil spirits, hidden in deep mountains and old forests, poured forth in full force, slaughtering villages and ravaging towns. Monstrous demonic energy even began to consume humanity's last fire of the mortal world. You stood among the clouds, overlooking this human world, plunged into misery, and cold fury finally ignited in your eyes. You never believed that demons should consume humans for cultivation. These rebellious demonic creatures were breaking the rules between heaven and earth. You floated above the firmament, letting out a roar that shattered the clouds. Blood eyes open instantly, an indescribably terrifying fluctuation. With you at its center, instantly enveloped the entire territory of the Moonwheel dynasty. Hundreds of thousands of demons committing evil within the dynasty's borders. Regardless of their cultivation depth, all had their eyes turned bloodshot at the same time. They discovered in terror that their bodies were no longer under their control. Your consciousness, like a god ruling the world, forcefully inhabited their minds. Those deeply sinful evil demons, under your will, had their bodies explode on the spot, their forms and spirits utterly annihilated. As for those who had committed less evil, they were firmly suppressed by you and fearfully retreated into their caves, no longer daring to emerge. It only took one day for you, by yourself, to completely quell the demonic chaos of an entire nation, the fire of the mortal world within the Moonwheel kingdom. On the verge of extinguishing, finally able to catch a breath, 12 years later, the Great Sage Dynasty was founded, golden dragon of destiny, condensed above the imperial city. The human race's fire of the mortal world once again flourished as before, illuminating the entire sky. And on the day this new dynasty was founded, the fire of the mortal world above the entire Great Sage Dynasty, unexpectedly transformed into a colossal torch reaching heaven and earth. At the very top of the torch, a wisp of the purest fire of gratitude condensed and flew directly into your mind. That mysterious pearl hidden deep within your mind glowed once more. To your surprise, in your spiritual world, it forcibly opened up a second ore vein, an endless mine, exclusively for the human race's fire of the mortal world. You were so angry you cursed inwardly. This pearl is utterly shameless. Stealing the army's iron-blooded killing aura wasn't enough. Now it even wants to steal the fire of the mortal world from the human royal authority. Cursing aside, but as a pragmatic dog, you still calmly split off a strand of your primordial spirit, transforming it into adamantium wolverine claws, and began a relentless, day and night dual mining career. Inside the mine, there was no concept of day or night. When you once again, due to a sudden feeling, withdrew your consciousness from your mind, you saw Xianxia, now grown up, with red-rimmed eyes. He knelt heavily before you. "Grandpa, my parents are gone." You were dazed for a moment. A hint of unconcealable loneliness flashed in your eyes. You stood up and patted Xianxia's shoulder with your broad hand. "Birth, old age, sickness, and death are all fated. Try to be open-minded." A few days later, 2 new graves appeared by the small river. That honest and simple Niu Bu and Zhu Yulin, whom you cherished like your own granddaughter, ultimately could not overcome the lifespan limitations of mortals, and were buried in the cold yellow earth. Xianxia, before his parents' graves, kowtowed several times with heavy thuds. Wiping away his tears, his gaze became incredibly resolute. Returning to the courtyard, he walked towards the plant that had accompanied him for decades, the gourd vine. As he approached, on the withered vine, the purple gourd erupted with dazzling divine light. It absorbed all the golden tadpole-shaped Dao patterns. "Grandpa maternal is gone." Xianxia bowed deeply to you. She too, and Jin Zhaoyan, he transformed into a soaring stream of light and vanished into the eastern horizon. You silently watched him leave. You had known for a long time that he was born to pursue the great Dao. It was only to fulfill his filial piety that he had idled away decades in this remote small town. Now that his ties were severed, he was like a fledgling eagle spreading its wings. Finally, was he going to contend with his own 90,000 li of vast sky? Time continued to rush forward relentlessly. During these years, Big Black Bear Xiang Wanli brought his adopted sister to White Crane Mountain. Xiang Wanli, with his peculiar aesthetics, constantly complained to you about how ugly this sister was. But when you actually met her, you discovered that this green fish spirit named Shui Yue was clearly a beautiful and ethereal, gentle and demure, stunningly beautiful young girl. In her eyes, when she looked at you, there was always a cautious admiration. She willingly stayed by your side, serving tea and pouring water. A few more years passed. Thunder rumbled above your secluded residence, with dark clouds pressing down. You, finally ushered in your second century-long heavenly tribulation. To overcome this tribulation, you would gain a full 20,000 years of cultivation and completely transform into human form. Without any surprise, that seemingly menacing minor heavenly tribulation, after sensing your abyss-like terrifying aura, could only humiliatingly transform into a light drizzle and drift away dejectedly. At the moment of your breakthrough, strange phenomena emerged between heaven and earth. Golden lotuses bloomed in the dawn sky, and light scattered across the mountains and forest. In a burst of scorching, sacred white light, your massive body began to melt and reshape. As the light dispersed, a man in white robes, with hair as white as snow, an elegant and handsome man, stood silently between heaven and earth. Your temperament was profound, calm as water. With every gesture, you exuded an unparalleled grace of returning to simplicity. Shui Yue watched, stunned, her small face flushed crimson. You had finally completed the perfect metamorphosis from demon to human, possessing a full 20,000 years of supreme cultivation. But at the very moment you successfully transformed into human form, your heart suddenly without any warning, twinged a bone-chilling sadness, like an invisible venomous snake, tightly coiled around your heart. It came from nowhere, yet carried a suffocating sense of destiny. Xianxia, with red-rimmed eyes, brought a piece of news that shook the world. The human race's sage of literature, Kinking, had passed away in the great Xia celestial dynasty. The moment you heard that name, your face was expressionless, but your vision completely blurred. That girl who, back then, loved to eat free candied hawthorns the most, who always rode on your back, wildly running like a duck, who, in her childish voice, called out Grandpa by, "Come chase me," that little girl, ultimately turned into a black and white negative of time, completely scattered by the fierce winds of time. She lived for 139 years. In this long life, she founded the Bay's Academy, pioneering the enrollment of women. She traveled and studied across Great Xia, single-handedly bringing all top scholars into the celestial dynasty. Moreover, carrying this immense righteous energy, she forcibly shattered the feudal iron laws of millennia and facilitated the ancient grand feat of women entering the imperial court. She wrote countless works that would be remembered for generations, such as Biography of Bays, Travels Through 100 Kingdoms, and chapter on Vast Righteous Kai. She became, after the Sage of Rites and the Sage of Music, the third sage in the history of the human race, the Sage of Literature. On the day of her burial, all the great Confucian scholars and common folk of the human race, emperors from various nations, and even the supreme benevolent emperor of Great Xia, personally went to mourn. You whispered, "Weren't you the sage of literature? Weren't you the sage of literature?" Sadness did not erupt like thunder, but like a waterlogged paper boat. It slowly sank in your heart. You returned to Dongbao Kingdom with Xianxia. You, step by step, ascended to the only legacy she left in this world. Bay's Academy. The back mountain of the academy was the place where she was buried. When you stepped into this area, the entire back mountain was illuminated by an immense and boundless vast righteous kai. If an ordinary demon or monster were to step in, it would turn into ashes in an instant. Even if it were a highly cultivated expert, they would be so overwhelmed by this sage's might that they could barely move an inch. But to your astonishment, you found that this vast righteous kai, powerful enough to destroy heaven and earth, when it fell upon you, was like a spring breeze caressing your face, without the slightest suppression or repulsion. Not until this moment did you awaken as if from a dream. Over these years, the demonic evil aura that belonged to you had long been cleansed away. You finally understood. Kinking writing that world-renowned biography of Bays was not for any literary vanity at all. She did it to prove to everyone in the world, to prove for you. She used her life's efforts and her reputation as a sage to wash away your demonic stigma, making you a spiritual beast recognized by heaven and earth, and revered by the human race, as long as you did not bring disaster upon the mortal world, whether it be human dynasties or all the gods and Buddhas in the heavens. Anyone who dared to harm you would suffer a great loss in cultivation and incur heavy karma. This smartest little girl in the world, even at the end of her life, turning into yellow earth, was still using her vast sage's might to shield you from all the malice and storms of this world. You walked to the simple white marble tomb. Before the tomb stood Xianxia, the former second most talented woman of Dongbao Kingdom, and the trembling, immature flood dragon beside her. That flood dragon, when it sensed the aura of a peerless great demon from you, an aura spanning 20,000 years, was so scared it almost soiled itself on the spot. You paid no mind to their fear, but instead, from your embrace, you pulled out a string of bright red candied hawthorns. You slowly squatted down and gently placed the candied hawthorns before the tombstone. You caressed the cold tombstone, your voice hoarse, carrying endless vicissitudes and tenderness. "Girl, Grandpa Bai has come to see you." Hearing this address, Xianxia was struck as if by lightning, finally recognizing your identity. With red-rimmed eyes, he told you that he was entrusted by Kinking before her death to deliberately wait for you here. Kinking had left a dying message. The original manuscript of the Bai Zi scroll was stored within the Chongli Academy of the Great Xia dynasty, and she had left a surprise for you. After hearing this, your heart was filled with bitterness and emotion. This foolish girl was still planning for you even until her death. After leaving the academy, you returned to the old Tang family residence in Bailing Commandery. Things remained, but people had changed. The old man who used to be in the study, writing letters to young people, was gone. The one who was always clumsy, Tang Zhengchen, who massaged your shoulders, was no longer there. In today's Tang family, even several of Tang Zhengchen's sons had grown old, died, and been buried. The innocent children who walked out from the main gate looked at you with unfamiliar yet polite eyes, asking in their fresh, young voices, "Who are you looking for?" Children meet but do not know each other, smilingly asking, "Where does this guest come from?" You smiled bitterly, reached out and gently touched the child's head. You said nothing, turned, and left in the drizzling rain of Bailing Commandery. Your solitary figure completely bid farewell to this karmic bond spanning 100 years. Finally, you arrived at General Zhang's residence. Today was Zhang Hui's 129th birthday. The loyal and righteous duke, the 10-year-old boy who, before his father Zhang Wulei's memorial hall, covered his mouth afraid to cry out, was now a man with a head full of white hair, awe-inspiring and formidable, a veteran of 3 dynasties, whom even the emperor feared. You have no clear sky. Dressed in white, you walk step by step into the bustling Zhang family mansion. The clamor instantly died down. The steward immediately shouted to drive you away, and the guards drew their swords, pointing them at you. But Zhang Hui's, sitting in his wheelchair, stared intently at you. His breathing was ragged, his eyes bloodshot. He frantically waved his hand, telling his attendants to push him before you. Trembling, he leaned closer to you and sniffed your scent. This old man, who had witnessed countless battles and political storms, and was accustomed to the blood and chaos of the battlefield and the court, was now sobbing uncontrollably. He gripped his wheelchair tightly with both hands, and with a cry, he fell from it to the ground, in front of the courtyard, full of dignitaries and guards. He heavily knelt at your feet. Hui's Greet's second maternal grandfather. The entire scene froze. You looked at this old man, who was nearing his grave, your gaze as gentle as water. Over 100 years have passed. Hui's, even you have grown old. You gently placed your hand on his head. He had the pair of great-grandchildren behind him, like Golden Boy and Jade Girl, kowtowed to you heavily 18 times, until their foreheads bled. You flicked your sleeve, wiping away their wounds, and casually left a remark that would drive the world mad. The Zhang family will enjoy 18 generations of prosperity and glory. All the guests were consumed by extreme envy, each wanting to kneel and beg for wealth and status. But to their horror, they found their legs felt as if cast in steel, unable to bend. You looked at them, your eyes indifferent. Those without destiny shall not prosper. Half a year later, Zhang Hui's died peacefully of old age. The entire nation mourned. In the Eastern Kingdom, the newly enthroned Emperor Hui had finally outlived this great worry in his heart. He greedily wanted to forcibly seize you and take you to the imperial palace to serve as a divine beast, protecting the nation's destiny. Those Taoist priests, supported by imperial power, bullied others with their influence, running up to you and threatening you with words. You didn't even lift an eyelid. A vast divine might descended from the heavens. Since our stances differ, then begone. The Taoist priests screamed as they fell from midair, their foundations shattered. 1,000 years of Taoist cultivation was utterly destroyed by your single move, casting them back to the mortal realm. That night, your divine consciousness traversed 10,000 li, transforming into a blazing crimson fire dragon. It ignored the imperial palaces, mortal dust fire that could incinerate all magic, and directly hovered inside Emperor Hui's imperial study. In the terrified and despairing gazes of the supreme ruler of the land, and the highly skilled old eunuch. Amidst terrified and despairing gazes, the fire dragon mercilessly pierced through Emperor Hui's chest. I cut 3 years from your lifespan, a small punishment for a great warning. Conduct yourself wisely. Your majestic, godlike voice echoed in the imperial study, scaring the ruler and his minister to collapse onto the ground. Grateful to have survived the ordeal, you took Shui Yor eastward, embarking on the long journey to the great Xia dynasty. You did not fly on clouds or mist, but measured the magnificent mountains and rivers of the mortal world with your own feet. 8 years later, you finally arrived at the border of the great Xia dynasty. This was the absolute orthodoxy of the human emperor's reign, where towering mortal dust fire, intertwined with the iron-blooded killing aura of 100,000 imperial mausoleum guards, forming an absolute realm where no magic could exist. As soon as you stepped onto this land, Shui Yuer's faint demonic aura was ignited by the mortal dust fire. The fire ignited, causing him to scream in pain repeatedly. You sighed softly and extended a finger to tap his glabella, relying on the identity of the sacred kite as a spirit beast. You forcefully gave him official endorsement, cleansing him of his demonic aura, allowing him to walk freely in the human sacred land. While passing a bustling market, you saw a boy of 8 or 9 who, because he wanted to eat a hot steamed bun filled with meat, was throwing a tantrum and rolling in the mud. His plainly dressed mother, needing to save every copper coin to buy medicine to prolong her gravely ill husband's life, could only, with tears in her eyes and in public, fiercely spank his bottom. Passers-by felt pity, offering buns which the mother tearfully refused. You stood quietly at the end of the street, watching the embarrassed and sad figures of the mother and son, your eyes filled with extreme complexity. Even if his appearance had changed and his temperament had changed, you still, with one glance, recognized the imprint deep within the boy's soul. So, you have already reincarnated, you murmured softly, your voice carrying the bitterness and relief of 100 years. That was the reincarnation of Teng Zijing, the one who was once spirited and full of pride, who for your sake would willingly descend to the 18 layers of hell, enduring endless torture. That clean old man, now, he had reincarnated as a peasant child who couldn't even afford a meat bun and could only roll in the mud. You transformed into an old Chinese doctor with an immortal demeanor and walked into that dilapidated small courtyard, open to the elements on all sides. You took out several silver needles and swiftly inserted them, forcefully pulling that emaciated man, who was on the verge of death, back from the gates of hell. Amidst the couple's grateful and tearful kowtows, you patted the little boy's head, leaving behind the phrase, "From a humble family, a noble son shall emerge," then turned and left. Wait, the little boy suddenly called out loudly to you. He didn't know why he had shouted, but just seeing your desolate back in white, a strange panic and emptiness welled up in his heart. He awkwardly scratched his foot and nervously asked, Will we meet again? You stopped and turned your head. You looked at him with gentle eyes, just as you had looked at that dirty little dog in the dilapidated temple all those years ago. You gently shook your head. No, why the boy pressed. You were silent for a long time, then suddenly looked up and laughed freely amidst the falling rain. Because it's forbidden, you turned gracefully in the misty rain. You walked further and further away, never looking back. The previous life was the previous life. This life is this life. He is no longer the poor scholar who depended on you for survival. You are no longer the little white dog hiding in his arms, trembling with fear. Keep that most precious, most unforgettable affection forever in your heart. Do not disturb his new life. This is your final respect for him. When your paths converged, you saw him in the crowd. When your fate ended, you saw him in the crowd bidding farewell to his past. You finally stepped into that city, which was like a prehistoric behemoth, the great Xia imperial city. Here, all laws are void. Even peerless great demons must walk like mortals. Yet, you were uninhibited. The moment you approached, golden rays of light filled the sky, transforming into a sacred vortex, enveloping the entire sky above the imperial city. You announced to the world with a mighty, thunderous voice, I am Bai Zi, and I shall visit Chongli Academy in 3 days. The entire journey was a frenzy. The legend of Bai Zi had been circulating for over 80 years. You were not only a living legend in the book, but also a revered totem in the hearts of scholars across the land, admired like a towering mountain. 3 days later, you, accompanied by Shui Yuer, amidst countless dignitaries, talented scholars, and the cheers and screams of fervent maidens, stepped into the gates of Chongli Academy. Inside the academy, facing a great scholar who had studied Go his entire life, you only needed fewer than 20 moves to defeat him. Making his eyes turn bloodshot, and his hand holding the chess piece tremble like chaff, he dejectedly admitted defeat. You smiled and said you were just playing randomly, yet this only made all the great scholars present revere you even more, as if you were a god. Afterward, Princess Zugong, Nai Chengyun, led you to the most sacred hall of sages. At the end of the grand hall stood 2 enormous statues. The one on the right, clad in white, was elegant and dignified, with unparalleled grace. It was none other than Tang Kinking. You looked at the cold statue, your nose uncontrollably stinging with emotion. That little girl who used to love wearing red, peerlessly wild and uninhibited, in order to temper her sharp edge and become the stabilizing force of the human race, eventually changed into white clothes. It was eternally enshrined in this grand hall, in front of the divine altar in the side hall. Nai Chengyun solemnly handed you the original manuscript of the legend of Bai Zi, which exuded a righteous aura. This line is a continuation of the previous one. When you opened the book to the first sentence, you were completely overwhelmed with emotion. Fish roamed the mountains and rivers of the world, and by chance encountered a wondrous flower amidst the clouds. Hearing it was beneficial to the demon race, a venerable elder clothed it. It turned out he not only used this book to cleanse you of your demon identity, but also, within the book, sealed an earth-shattering fortune for you. The pages rustled, and a pillar of light shot skyward. A resplendent, sacred, and flawless flower in the clouds suddenly bloomed thousands of feet above the imperial city. That was a divine medicine that escaped when the immortal realm collapsed. It was a rare wonder of the mortal world, seen only once in 10,000 years. Countless powerful beings across the land were green with envy, to the point of madness. Yet due to the rule that suppressed all powers, they couldn't even fly. They could only stare helplessly. Kinking had calculated everything perfectly. He knew that if he gave it to you outside, it would attract countless powerful beings to hunt you down. So he hid the flower in the imperial city, where all laws were void, hidden within the triumph of the world's literati. Only you, in this sacred human city, grandly extended a colossal hand that covered the sky, plucking away that wondrous flower along with its clouds. You entered seclusion for a full 2 months, completely refining it. In the fragmented memories of the flower, you saw the terrifying scene of the immortal realm collapsing, and witnessed those high and mighty immortals and Buddhas, desperately wailing in a sea of fire, their tragic end as they turned to ashes and vanished. You resisted the temptation of that false ascension. On the day you emerged from seclusion, your cultivation base once again surged by 10,000 years. Now, you are already a supreme being, possessing a terrifying cultivation of 31,000 years.